Okay, I'd like to welcome council and staff to the Committee of the Whole on the Monday, November the 30th. Confirmation of agenda. You see the agenda before you. Is there anything add, delete? Seeing none. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest, general nature thereof? Seeing none. The adoption of minutes, please, from our last Committee of the Whole meeting.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Gardner, seconded by Councillor Lewis, that the minutes of the Committee of the Whole held on November 25th, 2020 of the 7th Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of South Dundas be adopted as circulated.
Any discussion? All heard the motion. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. So we'll go on to discussion items, and the first one is the Sdmc lobby renovation design. So I'll turn it over to the clerk and the CBO. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Today we bring you 3 designs that we've been working with the consultant for the downstairs front lobby renovation. So I'll turn it over to Nicole so she can explain it since she has the knowledge.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So we've been working with the contractor to design the layout for the office space downstairs in our main lobby. As you know, because this is our main lobby, it's a focal point for public coming in. We wanted to maintain the most open space as possible between the office space and the public. This is our kind of draft design that we want council to bring their opinions on before we go back to get a final design. So what Brenda and I are hoping is to get more open window space so you can see through, get the light coming in from that, so the east wall, and make sure it's as open as possible. The desks laid out in there are just for an example of size. They're not what we're going to be using. And the circles in there are for barrier free. That's what a turning radius looks like within that space. So if you have any questions, we can answer them at any time.
Okay, Councilor Wells.
Basically, to me, it's totally up to you guys. You guys are going to be using the space. The design, you all got your barrier free. Like, it's just basically the one is just showing a little different furniture thing, and like I said, for me, it's whatever staff would prefer because they're going to be using it. It's as long as it's like friendly when the public's coming in, and other than that, I'm good with whatever you guys choose.
Councilor Mellon.
I'm looking at the blueprints, and yeah, you know, I'm not a. Yeah, so this will be locked area, I take it, so there wouldn't, you know. My biggest concern, and I've said this before, we did spend money on the second floor, was for security purposes to, you know, the people were going to be down there. Let's face it, there's going to be lots of times when there's only going to be one there. You might have 2 designated in, but as long as the security measures are, you know, that somebody has to come in and pay their drainage bill at the last minute, you know, may not be happy if, you know, something, you know, but as long as it's good with me. That was my biggest concern. It's, you know, the security of the individual down there to make sure that, I guess it is locked doors or whatever. You know.
Yep, so it will be a secure office space. We will have 2 people working in that space, so one will be a continuous administration, and the other one is ideally planning or building technician, basically. So
Yeah.
they're dealing with all of the planning, building, bylaw related inquiries, and the other person is taking payments and doing administration.
But you know how staffing will rotate. There's going to be times that there's only going to be one there, probably. Won't there be? If people,
So what the plan will be is if one of those staff are off, then people will rotate from upstairs so that there's always 2 people downstairs.
yeah.
We also have cameras too, so they're also monitored every day from a security perspective as well.
Probably more secure than what we have down there now.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. If it works, if that's the best way to do it, drive on.
I think also, Councillor Mellon, that it's a 2-door system, so they're not, those doors aren't together. They can get in one way and get out the other way, correct? So if you look at at either, any of those options, you can see that there's two doors.
Okay. At one time, there was also, I don't know, in one of the reports, they were saying that there, maybe another entrance way for the clinic, but we're not, I'm looking at these blueprints, we're not talking putting another door in from the outside here.
No, it was something we were exploring with the medical clinic, and at this time, they're not interested in going down that route, but we're going to look at some other options as far as how we can reduce the amount of traffic that's in that front lobby area. But we'll come back with some other options down the road once we have a conversation with the medical clinic.
Don't know if that's necessary anyways, but
Yeah, we'll see what this new renovation does and see how it monitors the traffic and stuff, and then from there we can look at other options if needed.
there's still going to be, like Councillor Wells has already said, enough area, open area for the traffic from the washrooms and the library and going to the clinic and whatnot.
Right.
Yeah, okay, whatever, it's good. No, I'm done.
Councilor Lewis?
I take it in all three options. The first set of doors, that's the elevator.
Yeah, so the dark square that you see there is our elevator. There's the front door to the elevator is on the top, and then the side is an access panel for the equipment for the elevator. So that has to be maintained there, but it's rarely used. It's only for maintenance.
Yep, I knew that. Myself, personally, I like option number 3. I like the design of the handicapped or accessible window. I don't know what your measurements are on option number 2, but I really do like the option number 3 over all 3 of them. And the layout looks good, and the reason I know option 2 and option 3 is almost identical except for the windows, but I like where the doors are set up, because the first door, the guy from Otis can walk right in there, do his thing with the elevator, because I know that's where the door is for maintenance on the elevator. I like option 3. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, I think they're actually all good options. The only concern that I have is I think you would probably want the office furniture set so the sight line is to the door. I think some of them you've got their back facing, and I think that would be problematic. I think probably 6 months in you're going to have somebody say we need to move the desk because I don't like having my back to the door. So I think as long as the sight lines are clear, and when we talk about the windows for the secondary office, I do like the bigger window. I think as long as the sight lines are good and it's an open space with multiple options for like multiple doors, you'd be good. If there ever was a security concern, one of the things I could say is you could just up one of the doors. If it was a case of going in the elevator maintenance room or whatever and having an upgraded door where you could lock or whatever, almost like a safe room, but that's more school talk. But they're all good options, but like I said, I would recommend that nobody's back is turned to the entrance.
Yeah, that was one of our concerns with this design here.
Yeah.
The sketch that we proposed had our office staff facing that entry point.
Yeah.
Because we definitely don't want to be working with your back towards the public.
It'll just, and it's funny because even people that aren't aware, it's going to bother them and they're not going to know why. And it's because you've got people constantly coming up behind you. So that's it.
Okay, so, just to confirm, the east wall, the Sdmc doesn't get changed, right? The outside is still the outside, the windows are the windows, whatever's there is there. Okay, first one. From a space point of view, option 1 tends to give you more space. Is that a pro, con from your point of view? And I'm going to tell you right now, look ahead, don't say, oh crap, I wish I'd used every ounce of space up now versus later.
I think it does give you more space, but it doesn't allow for that other glazing wall. So it doesn't open up the wall more, it kind of closes it in. So as you're coming in the front entry, all you see is a corner wall with a closed door. We would like to open that up and have the window facing the entry, whereas if you walk up as a public member going to pay something, you can see directly into that space rather than see the wall.
Okay, so you're leaning then is to option 2. If,
2 or 3, yeah. So option 3 ideally would have a window on that wall as well. Yeah, facing the north.
yeah. Well, that does make sense. I just want to make sure that you're looking at, utilizing all the space up best you can. I guess there's pros and cons about whether office staff are, the reception has to be facing out. That's very obvious, but whoever's working in behind, it's have to be very good and very disciplined at eliminating distractions, because people going by, whether it's in the windows or in there, it's what you can always shade the windows and then that's done. So that would be my concern, and I know that some people can operate with the distractions quite well, and others, like myself, wouldn't be able to work there. Just shut the door and get out of here, and that's just the way people are. So, okay, seems like council's good with what we've got here. Councilor Wells.
One more thing. If you guys are leaning to option 2, which it seems you are, I would take that W1, and I would make that window bigger.
Yeah, we want to make it the full wall
As
length.
much as you can get in there, because it looks more inviting than looking at a wall, so.
And the other thing, if you look at the elevation option 3, where there's 2 different elevations that Councillor Lewis was talking about, we actually want to bring it down so it's all barrier-free height. Our staff members in the admin said it's easier for them to work at that elevation than it is for standing and changing the heights. So we want to bring it all, it's basically desk height.
Even this other window too, like the window 2, there's room on that wall to probably gain another foot. I would actually go with the bigger window there.
Yeah, we actually want to take it the full length, so you'd have a mullion or support in the corner.
Yep.
And then another one between the door and the window, and then it's full wall
Yep.
glazing.
No, that's good.
Okay,
That's it.
Any other questions, concerns? Councilor Mellon?
I know we got the money from a county program, I believe. Yeah, City of Cornwall.
Correct.
Have you got any type of, anybody give you any cost estimates sort of with these options?
Yeah, the
They're gonna-
original proposal that we brought to council with the fees had all of their kind of ideas included.
Oh, okay. So that
some-
price that we got at the council meeting was based on these designs?
Yeah, so
Okay.
some of the costs that they included weren't shown in this drawing, so we have option to do larger windows or remove a door. There's wiggle room there, which is nice.
Okay, anything else? Okay, you have your ideas, comments, and carry on, please. Next, key information report on the draft procurement policy. And Sarah, please.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I provided Council with a copy of the policy with the changes on your desk this morning, so you can follow along as I go through the policy. So back in May, there was a request from Council to review the procurement policy to see if there is any way to amend the policy so local contractors have more opportunity to bid on our projects. This policy hasn't had a formal review since its major revision in 2017. So staff also took the opportunity to have a more thorough legal review completed and also to see what the options were for amending the policy. I'm going to go through the suggested changes first, and then we can go through the discussion points in my report. So starting off in section 1, you'll see 2 changes that are common throughout the document. The first being changing the word ensure to encourage. The intent of this is to narrow the scope in some of the sections by using permissive language like encourage, should, and promote, instead of mandatory language like shall, ensure, and must. The reasoning behind this is that if we were ever challenged on our policy, it provides the municipality more room to maneuver. The second change is changing vendor or supplier to supplier/vendor. This is, again, to provide consistency throughout the document by using terms that are defined in Schedule A. In sections 3 and 4, you'll see that the majority of the changes are shifting to permissive language. In point 3, we've added inappropriate circumstances to the beginning because it may not always be desirable for the municipality to consider more than the lowest price if a bid is otherwise compliant. Moving on to the next page, in point 7 and 8, the wording has been changed to make the statements more clear. In section 4, again, the wording has been changed to permissive language. We've also removed the statement, respect must be demonstrated for each other and the environment in point number 2. This recommendation is to remove the statement as it is a very broad statement. On the next page in point number 3, conflict of interest, we've added in language to reference the municipality's code of conduct for council. This is to provide some direction should any conflict of interest arise during the procurement process. On the next page in section 5, point number 7, we remove the sentence, but preferably prior to opening of bids, as it has the potential to lead to complaints if a situation arises where we didn't cancel prior to opening. There's also some language added to clarify this point. Point number 12, same as above, added some more language for clarity. Moving on to the next page, point 19 was added so Schedule D was referenced in the policy. The next major change is on in section 8, so that's page 6 of 30. We added some more language for clarity again. As it was written before, it was unclear as to the approval process when the municipality is in a joint tender situation. Section 9, we've added alternate wording for clarity. On the next page, section 10, at the very end in bid deposits, we revised the wording from the lowest 2 bids to 2 highest ranking bids. In certain situations, it may not be in the municipality's best interest to consider just the lowest bid submitted. Directors should be looking at the entire bid submission and consider things such as, for example, company past performance and warranty advantages. On the next page in section 12, insurance, we've greatly reduced the level of detail provided. This is because the insurance requirements vary greatly depending on the tender requirements, and the requirements are outlined in the tender document. If we were to keep this section the same, the recommendation would be to up the insurance to $5 million instead of 2. But again, these numbers can fluctuate depending on the tender project. And section 13, indemnification, it's the same as the insurance section. We reduced the level of detail and we'll capture any indemnity requirements in the tender documents and agreements. In section 15, page 10, we added in sentence referencing Schedule E as it wasn't referenced in the policy before. The next major change, again, section 15, methods of procurement under number 2, tenders. This is on page 12 of 30, where it says the applicable laws for competitive bidding will be followed if retendering is contemplated. The issue with this statement is that laws of competitive bidding is not a defined term, and the sentence itself doesn't have any specific legal meaning. Also, following the law in retendering would be implied in this situation, and the intent of the sentence is captured by the policy. The next section for written quotations. We'll have discussion at the end as to how council would like to handle quotations in advertisements going forward. Section 16 we've added in a section on contract renewal options at the recommendation of our lawyer. This section is optional, but it does give council the authority based on a recommendation from a director to renew contracts if there's deemed to be a benefit to the municipality. The next change, we've added in 2 new sections on page 16, section 18 and 19. They deal with disputes should any arise pre or post award. These sections provide guidance to directors should these situations arise. For Schedule A definitions,
Sarah?
we remove word. Yes?
Sarah, before we go on, I'd like to make sure council's comfortable with what you've already presented. If there's any questions, comments, concerns from any member, or we can go on to the end. We're good to the end? Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Schedule A definitions, we removed words that aren't used in the policy and also added words if they're used frequently throughout. There's also been some additional language included for clarity. That's kind of it for recommended changes. I can answer any questions council can have at this time, and then we can move on to discussing written quotations next.
Okay. Mayor?
Sarah, so when you refer to past performance, how do we have a policy in place that poor performance or good performance is recorded?
So directors themselves should be making notes whenever there is a tender going through. We do have, there's a Schedule F, I believe, that's kind of provides some guidance for post-project evaluation form. But there is no, I guess, formal process that we follow at this time for.
So if Director A doesn't talk to Director B, how do we know that there was a problem with the last contract?
That's a fair question.
I'm just thinking, just to make this a little bit more robust, because you've spent some time on that. If you have an official reporting system, I imagine it would be housed in the CAO's office. Just a rating, and it could be a good as well, right? It doesn't always have to be a bad, but if there's been major issues with timelines, that type of thing, there needs to be a substantial way to record those issues, and then that way nobody's time is wasted when you put out another tender and they submit.
So what we could look at doing is taking that Schedule F, which is the project evaluation form, making that a requirement to be completed upon the awarding, and keep that in the file so that we have all of our project files are in our central filing system, so it's access to everybody, so that at least if another department's pulling that out, they'll see that form that they can say, okay, here's the evaluation and all that stuff.
I think too, for the purposes of just engagement and clarity and accountability, I think it's important that the directors are actively involved and they know that they have to report at the end, so there's some way. So that was one of my questions. The other thing is there any point in which we would review, so say somebody's received, I don't know, say the same company receives winning bids, say 5 times in a row. Do we have something that triggers maybe a review just to make sure that all the rules are being followed?
We would review each tender individually whenever they come in to make sure it follows all the specifications, but I don't believe we've ever encountered a situation like that.
This is more on staff accountability. So if one company, I get it at council, and council accountability too. Just if say the same company is always getting awarded, especially the lower ones, just a review to make sure that the fairness, because you've got a document that starts out by saying that you're looking at fairness.
Well, I think the other piece that's in there too is that we also add in there that just because you have the lowest price doesn't mean you're going to win that. So there's more components to just the lowest price. That's part of it, right? So if somebody does win it 5 times, right, maybe it's a more thorough review of, okay, do they have all the components as part of that too?
Well, I think that's what our residents would look at as far as the optics of just the fairness thing, that somebody doesn't know the rules super well, so they know how to bend them. And then that was it.
I like the idea of not always the lowest bid wins, because sometimes that doesn't work out very good, as we've seen in the past. This exercise of contract renewal, now is that like our heating, our plumbing, and stuff like that?
So I'll use as an example our waste collection that we had with Miller. So we
Okay.
had in that contract, we could actually extend it 2 more one-year contracts. So that would allow the director to bring it back to council, say, this is our recommendation, and then just continue that, if it's in the best interest of the municipality.
So that has nothing to do with the lower,
No.
the lower stuff?
No, so it's contracts, you know, even Sarah's contract with auditing services. As part of that contract, there is a renewal for 1-2-year terms.
Right.
That would allow that as part of that.
Okay, no, I'm happy with that. That was the only concern I had right there. So, no, everything else looks pretty good. Thank you.
Councilor Mallon?
Well, I scribbled a whole bunch of different notes down here. I guess, if you will, on when we only get one bid on a tender, that bid can be opened.
That's correct.
Is that information at that time held confidential until council? What I'm getting at is, if you only have one bid on it, and if it comes in over, council has the option of accepting that if it comes in over budget.
Correct.
My issue is that that should be done in a confidential manner, so that if we
All tender
retender,
openings need to be
if we
public.
retender it, you know, the other contractors, all of a sudden, they don't see what contractor A has put the bid in at. We ran into an issue a few years ago with one bid, and we retendered it, and just so that it would be fair. So if we reject that tender, that should be held in confidence in camera. Can we do that? Do it in camera? And if we want to accept the bid, then it goes into open camera. But if we don't, that dollar amount that if we retender, that contractor's information is not out to the regular public, if you will, or other contractors.
So if we receive one bid, we have the option to just not open it and retender. But if we were to do an opening, tender openings need to be public. So we don't have the option to go in camera for that.
My concern is,
The only option we would have is, and we've done it in the past on certain projects that are, I'll use our auditing services, I think, as an example. We don't provide the costing for that in our report because it's confidential information. They don't want every other municipality knowing what they're charging certain ones. So if we were looking at that, it might be more of a report, but not with the amount in there. Just that we want to award it to so-and-so, but it's above the budget price, and then look for some direction from council at that time. So we wouldn't tell what the price is, we just look for more direction from council, either A, if you're comfortable with it going over budget, then we would bring it back as a price to approve, and if you're not comfortable with that, then we would look at retendering.
yeah, because if my issue, I think I'm trying to get,
Yep.
if you know what I'm trying to say.
Yep.
If we retender the package and
Right.
the other contractors then can say, oh, well, you know.
Right, and Sarah's right, like as far as the pricing is that it needs to be a public information, right?
Okay.
So-
In section 11, performance security, when is that refunded back? Like, we have a holdback on a job once it's done, and make sure it's done properly. But performance security, is that the same thing?
No,
No.
totally different.
So you have to put a performance security on. I've heard some contractors that, have waited a long time for a deposit back, up to a year.
Those would probably be the municipal drains, probably?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a municipal drain matter,
Okay.
yes.
Yep.
And,
Yep.
which is, I have no problem with, holding back money until the drain is inspected. Yes, it's done right, and which it is, but then this, they're having money held back for up to a year to get their money back on performance security. I'm assuming it's a performance security issue.
Sometimes it could be just on the timing of it too, is if it's, completed in the winter, we want to see how the winter holds up with the final job. So it might be in the spring that we release it. And the reason I said municipal drains is I know there were some issues way in the past as far as things
Yeah.
being held for a year, but I think with the new process and stuff we have in place with the drainage superintendent, those should be released much quicker.
Okay,
I think there'd be more control on the job that's being done as well too, right? So.
okay. I had some other things here, but we really haven't got into that section yet, I guess. Mathematical errors and stuff like that. I'll wait on that. Section 14, have we even got to 14 yet?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Document, so.
14, when we're request for proposal, that, with, I'm not 100% sure I even totally agree on that, but when you're having different contractors, it's sort of hard to compare apples to apples with the quality of contractors, the quality of operators, the machinery they use. I know we try and we specify, we want X number of tonnage of a machine. Mm-hmm. I'm going back to drainage work again. Mm-hmm. But that's where I have a problem, I guess, with requests for proposals or requests for quotations on that, because there can be a big difference between operators, machines, how much you can get done in a day and stuff. So I have somewhat of an issue with that, how we do that. But
If you had part of the RFP as process as references, they
Yeah.
would have to give us references and we could check them. And
Yeah.
that- Because, I understand where you're coming from, and that was some of the pushback that you and I received. And I think, and it's fair, but if someone has to give references of previous jobs done, and you can go, let's say they did a job for X municipality, and you can go talk to them and say, what do you think of their work? Was it good? Was it timely? The operator know what they do? And it was yes or no, and then you can use
Yeah.
that as part of your RFP. Would that make sense?
Yep.
I would definitely want that in there, because, that way, like you say, you can check, because there can be, somebody could throw somebody like me on a shovel and I could dig a hole and probably bury it, but that's about it, so,
Well, and I think that's part of that post-project evaluation form, having those in there, is that somebody that's going back to that, say, a year down the road, can look at the awarding and say, okay, was the project good? Was the contractor good? What was the issues? What were concerns? And then go from there too. So having that back history and those references, I think are huge.
Okay. Okay, well, I'll maybe get into when we do request for proposals and request for quotations and tendering maybe a little bit later, if that's all right, Mayor Byvells. I'm just not 100% sure on how I, how we go about that, but yeah. Okay, that's all for now. I'll sort of scribble off some of my, what I've got looked at. Thank you.
We'll go around again. Councilor Wells.
Yes, I read everything. It's like everything looks fairly good, some of the changes. What Councilor Mellon was talking about, references, I think that not only it should be used for all of them, the RFP, the RFQs, the RFTs. Like reference go a long ways, and that will determine too, like the municipal always had a thing there, not necessarily the lowest bid is going to be accepted. That's been done for years. So this just gives us the extra tool to work with when you have references where if it comes back, even though the guy was the lowest, and you get 3 different jobs he put in for, well, we wouldn't have him back. Well, definitely if there was a gap there, we're not going to have him. Like, foolish on our part. You were saying too, Shane, about having on file where all departments could go and say, check on a contractor or whatever, and it'd be on record. But say hypothetically whoever it was has a black mark on the record, and I don't know, is there anything in there that we're going to, say 2 years down the road, the same contractor bids on a job and he comes back and say if they're putting a HVAC over there in whatever building, it comes back, well, the last job he did for on one of his references was bad, and okay, now he's got a black mark. Well, maybe he's corrected everything where he's got that black mark from originally. So it would have to be something in place that would have to review his thing again, and that's so much as going back to having references is, I think, is the key to this policy anyways, for any policy when it comes to procurement stuff.
Yeah,
That you can go back and take him out of the system, that he's good to go again.
I think there is a section in here, a small section that says that on an annual basis, it should be reviewed with the CAO and the directors. So that would be as.
But you wouldn't really be able to review it if you didn't, if they're, like, you say an annual thing, but say if John Doe's company doesn't bid for 3 years.
Yep.
You know, and say you can do an annual every time, but you have no information to go on. So.
Yeah, and I think that's where your references come into play, right? I know a lot of the jobs we've done this year, our waste collection, our capping, those big projects, all reference having references, which we did follow up on to find out their work and stuff. So I think if you're always doing that, then I think you're always ahead of the game, right? You're finding out the weak contractors versus the strong contractors, right?
And
Just throw a suggestion out, Councillor Weld. I know the counties in their procurement policy, if someone has an error in their tender or something is wrong, or as you would say, get a black mark, it lasts for 2 years, and then it would go back to, you would go back to at least having a chance to go back on it. I know that there was an automotive dealership within the counties that didn't do something right within a tender document, and as such, they weren't allowed to bid for the next 2 years. So that kind of crinkles it. There's pros and cons to that, because sometimes it's a minor error and you wish you could just ignore it. But if it's major, you want to make sure that that company or that individual is righted the wrong. You know, I agree with you. You don't want a black mark forever, but
No.
you know, the old saying goes, 3 strikes you're out, though, might be one of those ones you might want to apply eventually.
And going back to, it was Councilor Mellon's bringing up all my questions here. Going back to the one bid thing, and just through experience with myself on, I'm not going to name names either on one project here in Morrisburg, that if it was looked into, that job was probably overcharged by at least 50% of what it should have been. And in that situation, another thing, Councilor Mellon, like our warranty thing, that 1 year warranty is like you have your 10% holdback if a job, like say something like Ontario Street, they would probably be putting in monthly invoices, wouldn't they, Shannon, for a project that size? So every one would be a 10% holdback on it. But then at the end, and we already have it in our policy where you have to pay a percentage for, say, up to 100,000, 100,000, 500,000, 500 to $1 million, and so on. There's a percentage that's held back. That's for your warranty, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Which is a good thing, because a year down the road, it seems like a long time, but even, I don't know so much, well, I'd say a ditch too. If you, 6 months down the road, you start going and we have, it's dry, let's say. We're in a drought. Then all of a sudden, 6 months down the road, we get enough water. Well, the inspector goes back and that ditch is going the opposite way or something. So there's something that warranty that would stay back, where you would be able to get that funds to make that go right. And that would pertain to any job. I like the idea about the renewal, even on a RFT, like if a company was awarded and it comes to the point, said, well, geez, we want to add another 30 feet to that building. Well, that company's there, and it's in our best interest, the municipality, because they're gonna bid it low to start with, and that's a good thing to have in there. It's a very good thing, because it's always in our benefit to use the contractors on there instead of going out. So there's a few other things, but I think we're going to go around again, and I just want clarification on some of the, like, performance security, where we're going to call it performance bond, and percentages like that. And just a few words I think should be changed from certified checks and change order, or money orders and stuff. But this basically, when it goes around again, and we'll get into the fine details on that. So.
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead.
If I can just add, under section 5, number 12, does talk about poor performance, and it is a blacklist for 2 years, same as the counties.
Okay.
So that's already written in there. If there's any poor performance, or it's got to be documented, and then in 2 years' time, we can review it again.
That's it for me, Mayor.
Okay, I see a lot of good changes. I know some of the changes that evolved over some of the tenders we've had in the past, and some of the issues where you see something that isn't to the letter of our policy, and you land up taking something you don't want to take because A, your company's not what you want, or B, the price is wrong and you wish you'd take it, but this gives you some flexibility. I still believe we need to have performance bonds and all that right up front. I know it's a challenge for some of them. However, I will always remember the time when someone won a bid on roadside cutting, and he had a 4-year contract, and year 4 he wasn't going to make money, so he vamoosed, and we're stuck holding the bag, and we can't be holding the bag like that. You know, that person's going to lose something. As for only having one bid, I think, you know, I'm going to, I guess, caution staff on that, because if you'll end up with one, you open it, then you're kind of committed, because you've let the out of the bag, and the price is out and known now. So don't think that's fair to the person who bid, and not fair to everybody else. However, sometimes you will only get one bid even on the return, and then you'll land up in a situation where you got to do what you got to do. I want to make sure that any RFPs are done upright and fair, and make sure that whoever bids knows any kind of point system right from the start. Because I do believe that point system is very important. Sometimes you may pay more, but in the end you are getting more out of what you're getting. Other than that, I didn't see a lot of major concerns from myself that council hasn't already brought up, so we'll just go around the table at the end. Maybe it'll generate more ideas. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Gardner.
Thanks, Mayor. I actually don't have much other than because it's a bit of a change, how do you get it out? Like, I know it's online, but do you provide this policy when people, do they have to request it, or how does that work? Because there are some changes, right? Like,
Yeah, so it just becomes part of because it'll be passed by bylaw, so it'll
Yep.
become a public document. We'll take pieces of this procurement policy and incorporate it into our future RFPs, RFTs, all that stuff. And we do a lot of that stuff now to the mayors about the scoring, the point system. In some of the larger tenders, we do actually have a section in our tender that says, here's how we're going to evaluate the submission. It's not just based on pricing.
Yep.
So that will be kind of pieces from this will be incorporated into our new. But another thing we could look at doing too is putting this as part of on our website under procurement or something like that,
Okay.
just so that it gets out there.
perfect. Thank you. That's it.
No questions.
Councilor Mellon, more to your list?
Yeah.
That's okay. It's good they went through it.
What 16.5 on the emergency method. Right now, we have, we passed that the mayor signs off on, if there's emergency. In here, it's not, it's up to the directors and the CAO. Personally, I like the idea of the head of council, you know, being aware of it, like it may be just a phone call. You know, but I think it should maybe include the mayor or a designate. Like if Mayor Byville says was away, he would, you know, and couldn't be available, he would, you know, give that authority over to the deputy mayor. But I would like to see, I think when we pass that emergency measure thing,
Yep.
I think it's a good thing, and I think I'd like to continue with that, have the mayor involved in it, so, you know, there's no surprises, I guess, you know. But, you know, we trust staff, but I think, you know, and at the end of the day, the five of us are accountable, and, you know, the mayor, you know, we know what
Yep.
type of product runs uphill, and it will come back on us. The mathematical errors, like, you know, we have minor ones and whatnot. I don't even know what page that was on.
Probably it's a schedule, I believe, is it not, Sarah?
Oh, there we are. Oh,
Mathematical.
back here. Yeah, like, I mean,
Maybe Schedule C.
Schedule C.
so some of those, I agree with, you know, if it's a major error, yes. But, you know, if it's a mathematical error, a minor mathematical error, like, you know, somebody you know, didn't multiply right or whatever, you know, I think we can, I don't know if there's any room in there to maybe make it a little bit more user-friendly, maybe. We want to make sure we're getting the right, you know,
Maybe
we
wanna
don't have
talk-
something to come back to haunt us later.
Maybe we can talk
We
about
are going to
Schedule
have a
C.
discussion on
Okay.
this later.
Okay, sorry,
As to whether a council wants to make it more flexible or not.
yeah.
So we can have that discussion now if you want, we can wait till.
In some cases, yes, you know, but obviously if there's a major irregularity, you know, or something, but I think some areas, I think would, you know, maybe we could, if it's a minor mathematical error, like the 2 days to
Yeah.
correct. But then if that throws a kink into the whole tendering process, I'm not sure, I'll leave that, you know, I was just, a thought that went through my head when I was reading it. Also, I guess when we're into this whole procurement policy, on major, even not even major projects, I would like to see a clear and definite and firm timeline on projects when they're going to be done, because I've seen Ontario Street was wonderful. I think it came in ahead of budget, or ahead of time, did it not?
It might have been a couple of days.
Yeah.
It was scheduled to be the end of October, and by the time the final lift got put
And
on, it was.
You get big projects that are gonna throw a kink into the community, or, you know, I just really bothers me when I see projects that drag on, and, you know, and I know what goes on, the contractors, you know, they bid on something. I think a lot of that would have to do with the fact that, you know, if we put out last minute requests for proposals or tenders or whatever, you know, we'll bid on it, but, you know,
Yep.
I just feel that sometimes municipalities, and I'm sure all municipalities, get pushed to the back burner, you know, if they're doing work for a private contractor, probably won't tolerate it. They feel that they can maybe, you know, get away with it at a municipal level. So I would like to see, you know, wherever possible, you know, shorten up the work schedule and make it a clear, defined timeline when the job is supposed to be done, and build in penalties if they don't make those timelines. If there's extenuating circumstances, yes, you know, but just, you know, they would have to document that, come back to yourself or the director in charge, and you know, get approval. You know, yes, we're going to have to dig up this section too. But to me, I think that I'd like to see that. I really want that built in if we can.
Mm-hmm. It's something that we have looked at doing more this year, but with COVID, it did put a kind of a kink in it because of, you know, getting supplies and stuff like that. It was a little bit more difficult, but it's ones that we put in all of our tenders this year was a timeline with a penalty clause in there if it was not done in that time.
I like to see that in just about all,
Yep.
you know, it's not maybe a big thing as long as it's not a logistic nightmare for staff to, you know, but I mean, it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be, you know, just, you know, I go back to the Princeton Bridge, you know, and you know, it was sort of done on time, if you will, but it just, you know, it seemed to take too long. But you know, and you know, other projects like anything like that, you know, and I would put a penalty in there if they're not done. Maybe give them a 1-week grace period. But you know, if you're supposed to be done by the 1st of December, on the 7th of December, if they're not done, you know, we start penalizing them. You know.
I would caution council or staff on putting timelines in. I don't disagree with it, but they have to be realistic
Yeah.
and fair.
Yeah.
Because, you know, we had that discussion about the streetscape, and there was discussion going on between myself and Deputy Mayor and staff concerning what's appropriate for them to be done. You know, and some suggested the end of August, and I'm thinking, well, if you're gonna do that, be prepared to pay the price, because they're gonna concentrate on that and let other projects go. And a lot of these contractors, some of the big guys, like multiple projects where they, you know, they can shift the guys here and then come back here. As long as they get done by a reasonable time, then I think that's fair. But if you want a job done that, let's say it was a 6-month window and you could have 8, or if you want it done in 4, you're gonna pay more. It's just like anything else. You want it done today, this is the price. You give me some time, then there's more opportunities for others to bid onto it. So I don't, as I said, don't disagree, just make sure they're realistic.
I agree. Yeah, realistic. And the ones that, to me, I would tighten the time frame up are the ones where the public is going to be, you know, negatively impacted, like streetscape. Like, I mean, we don't want that to drag on. But you're right, Mayor Byvelds, you can't ask them to do it in, well, you could ask them to do it in 3 months or whatever. If you want to pay, you're going to pay more. But if it's, you know, if it's a realistic, I just don't want to, you know, projects to get dragged on, you know. And that will be up to, you know, maybe the project manager, the engineers, staff, you know, to say, okay, well, we should be able to do this. And
What's realistic, and then
Yeah,
add
realistic.
a little bit more.
Well, I think sometimes you got to be careful too, is what you think is realistic might not be realistic to contractors, right? So I'll use water towers as an example. When we did our water towers, we said, you know, a completion date of like, I think five months. Well, that when we had our mandatory on site, all the contractors that showed up said, this is not realistic at all. It's more 8 to 10 months. So we ended up changing our tender for our completion dates to be more realistic, so that we weren't, you know, getting a higher price because we wanted it done in a timely manner. So it's working with your contractors, understanding the elements that, you know, they can say we can have it done by August, but if they run into, you know, 3 weeks of rain where they can't do any work, it's working with the contractor, but we also don't want to pay the top dollar either, so.
a lot of this, if you will, and I'll shut up a little bit here, but a lot of it will be due with the timing of the tender.
Correct.
We can't realistically ask for somebody, you know, put a tender out in May, wanting it done by, you know, if we can get the tenders out early enough, and it goes right across the board, request for proposals even, you know, we get that tender out or that, you know, request out early enough, it gives the contractor time to schedule. But if we're late, part of the price will be probably a dragged out, you know, job. And it's realistic. You can't ask somebody to drop everybody else's job to finish us. I'll leave that in the hands of staff and the directors, and as long as there's something in there to keep, you know, the project moving. That's all for right now, I think.
Okay. Councilor Welch?
Yeah. Going back to the one bid thing, that if we're can't be like go in behind closed doors on one bid, if it's going to be has to be open, like a public opening, I would highly recommend to re-tender it, because like once you open it and you're pretty much, if he's under contract, if he's under budget, we have to give it to him. We don't have to give it to him, but there's no reason, if it came in under budget, like only us would know the budget, but I think if it's one thing, and it's going back to the one that saying if it would have went out, it would have been in the benefit of the municipality. If it would have went out again, then if you don't get someone else that bites, well, then open it. If it's under budget, boom, you go ahead and you follow through with it. Penalties. As being a contractor, that is a very sticky situation where, as Mayor Bible says, you put that in there and 9 times out of 10, the price is going to be higher. Because a lot of times you'll get companies say, well, there's no way, like the time frame, there's no way we can do that. So we're not even going to bid it. And you get companies that, I'll give you an example for a job I did for the municipality and the little bathroom over there. If you go back into that RFT, there was a $500 a day penalty if that job wasn't done in 30 days. Well, I was thinking more like 5 weeks. So there was a week that I added $500, so another $2,500 plus my markup and profit onto that tender. I had it done in the 4 weeks, but if that wasn't there, the municipality would have saved money. That's just one small example. Like that was only like a whatever it was, $30,000 or $40,000 job. So you can get yourself in trouble if we have to. We can put it in there, but we got to be able to some way, if we're going to word it, I think that we have really flexible to get around it or to just get rid of it. I think if you put that in there, that it's going to be in stone. We're going to run in as where people and contractors are going to say, well, okay, every job we do up there, there's going to be a penalty on it if we don't get it done. You might see a smaller people taking out drawn documents. That's just my opinion. I think it's what would happen.
So to that, the other thing we can look at doing, and we did it with the water towers, was we had them provide us with a timeline, a detailed timeline on start to finish. So we got from every submission is when they're starting, and week by week they're kind of snapshot of what they look at completing, and then we have a completion date. So
and
that's
yeah,
something we could look at doing.
To that, Shannon, in your RFTs, I've done it like you have to provide a schedule.
Yep.
And not so much it would be a schedule that it would be to the awarded company. So you start your mobilize and like right down to you demobilize, right?
Correct.
So then you have a on-site meeting with whoever's in charge of the project manager or the engineering firm or whoever, one of your directors. Then you go over and say, well, like, could you tighten this up maybe a week, and like we can give you a little more here. Like just it's something you work with. But the scheduling is really, really good for contractors. Love it.
Yep.
You put it in there and you have a detailed schedule. That way, going back to what Mayor Byville says, you get these bigger companies that'll throw guys there, and bring them back. This way, at least you're the one that provided the schedule to us, and we accept that schedule on what you. So then, if you're 2 months past your schedule, then there'd be something in there. Well, if you're 2 months, like there's going to be a percentage there that's going to be withheld or it's going to be taken away, like some small percentage, like a little fine or penalty, if whatever you. But let them put it in their schedule, not us kind of dictating with penalties and that, because, like I said, at the end of the day, the penalties they don't work in most cases. If we're, are we going to go around to about the price, like all the other stuff you were saying, Sarah, about discussion on like rejections and prices, and or are we going to start that, or sort of just continue?
No, well, let me come back, and I'll go back to you.
Go back to that?
Yeah.
So, other than that, the only other thing I wouldn't want to see, and actually just a light bulb just came on, and I was involved in this thing, where we had that job at the Dunbar Rec Hall, and it came over budget, and there was 10 companies that time, including myself, and it was took that the municipality redid the tender process, but took the 3 lowest. Well, between myself and whoever the other, Coleman or whoever, Grant, whoever it was, Well, everyone sees that price, and that's getting back to, I'm trying to get back to this opening one tender. It puts everyone on level playing field because everyone knows their price now, and it's just, I think something like that should just, don't take the lowest three, just put it back out for tender, revise your scope of work, then put it out that all 10 companies have a chance to do it again instead of free, because you're going through the whole process anyways. But in that case, they picked 3, which, thinking back, even though I was awarded the project, I would have sooner go against 10 companies again when no one knew your price. And it made it hard, and also like elevated the price a little bit because, okay, this guy's doing this now. Like, it's kind of like a poker game.
Yeah.
Where I think something like that is just, we do the scope of work over again, and that many companies that at that time, there was 10 of us, you're going to have 6 or 7 that's going to re-tender it anyways. So, other than that, I think there's nothing left till we get to the little bit of wording and stuff like that.
Okay. So just a reminder to you and council, the budget number is a public number because we made it up during budget. So unfortunately, every contractor knows what we think the project should come in at. And whether they go up, down from it, that's up to them. We did re-tender the campground building and opened that up. So there was an example of letting everybody, after we re-scoped it, and perhaps to your point, you know, just picking 3 limits you again. And some of the guys that didn't get picked said, well, if you re-scoped it, I could have priced it better.
Yeah.
So it's a challenge of us knowing, us having to do a budget and putting a number on every project we do. And I think it's up to staff to make sure that the number is fairly realistic, and then up to council to deal with how we're going to award it. And I still think getting one bid is a challenge. I like your idea. If we get one, we just say, nope, we'll just put it back out. And if we only get one again, then I guess we open up and away we go. But, you know, it's, if it fits in the budget, it fits. If it doesn't, then we as council can figure out where we're going to go. And but we do rely on our staff to make sure that the numbers are realistic to start with. And we as council not try to cut them back and say, well, we can do it for X, and then all of a sudden, well, we can't do it for X anymore. Now what do we do? And that's one of our challenges with that.
Excuse me, Mayor.
With your policy with the counties, like, we all know the streetscape is estimate budget
Yeah.
of 4.5 million.
Yeah, numbers out there.
As a contractor, and obviously these numbers are coming from an engineering firm.
That's
It's
correct.
not going to be you guys sitting at the table. It's not going to be us sitting here doing it. But I think something like that, in the best interest, it should be something that's just seen by us. Because say if 2 or 3 companies, I know.
We can't do it. We can't do it. We have to be open and transparent, and if we're going to bid it out, then we have to have an estimate of what it's going to cost us. We had an estimate on Ontario Street.
Yeah, but you don't see
Same thing.
see that in
We didn't-
RFT coming from the province. You go and ask the St. Lawrence Parks Commission or Ontario what they think the estimate cost is going to be. The answer is no.
But
So I
they're-
don't understand why we have to do it.
Because we're in under the municipal act and municipal world, and we have to be much more open and transparent than the provincial government or the federal government. That's unfortunate, but that's the way our world works. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're right, absolutely.
It seems.
If you got nothing to do someday, read the municipal act. It might drive you nuts, but it's.
Well, trust me, I've read some of it, but
It is it is rather ironic that, you know, the lieutenant governor and council, which is cabinet, can have a secret meeting and do everything in secret, and nothing comes out.
Yep.
And Lord help the person that blows confidence, is what happened in Alberta in the last week, where things got exposed. But or what happened with the WE scandal and the feds, that was all secret till someone blew it out. But we can't even do that. Like, this council meeting is live and
Oh, I know.
way to
I know.
roll, and, you know, we only have, these are the things we can go into closed session, and I know that our current clerk sticks to it real hard, and every once in a while, oh, can we, no, and that's the way, because if we do something wrong, then
gotta
things
be
will come back
accountable
to
for
it.
it.
So, on the streetscape, yeah, the number's out there, the tender is out right now.
Yep.
We'll be closing in a week or so. There are timelines. Timelines start in May and finish by the middle of October. So everything's fairly open, but yeah, the number's out there. And, you know, we had a number on, I remember the Dunbar build, it was like 187 grand or something like that, and they all went out. But somebody underestimated the scope of work, and then you're stuck with redoing
It
it.
came in, it was 250 something.
That's right. So, you know, and then when you mentioned about the washroom build and had to be 4 weeks, and I'm thinking, 4 weeks, that's a pretty tight thing, even if you concentrate the whole thing on one run, like
Yeah.
build a building of that scope we have to be realistic, staff has to be realistic in how they scope things out.
It was just, I always, like, when the price is there, and even though, like, that streetscape, I can guarantee it, it's, whatever we have, 4.5, they'll be within 100,000 of that.
I'm pretty confident it's gonna come in better, because I think it's overestimated, but we'll see.
I hope so.
Because there's some very competitive companies out there that will want to do that job, and they'll say, well, we can do it for this, and we can live with it.
And it's also a spring job, right?
It's a spring job,
So,
right? or roll,
like, people
so-
get something underneath them, which is good, like, whatever capital stuff we have this year, it'd be nice to get it out for the spring, and I think we'll see a lot better results.
Yeah, for sure. So one thing that I did write down before we go away, and I mentioned it before to staff, and I think council's heard it before too, is how do we procure or allow staff to procure used equipment? And for an example, rec staff has been after council to buy a tractor to replace the Cub Cadet. And I'm thinking right now that you have the start of a outdoor rink in Morseburg there, a tractor and a loader would be a real handy piece of equipment for them to clean that off, because now you're going to have to bring in a backhoe and stuff like that, not quite as handy. However, I was just looking through a used equipment magazine, and you know, you can buy some decent equipment with low hours at a better rate than buying a brand new one. I'd rather buy a name brand at a better rate than put it out to tender and you'll end up with the bottom end of the stuff. Like, you'll buy tractors that you wish 5 years down the road you never had, and that's your challenge. You know, like, I as a farmer or a business owner can buy what I want. We can't do that unless we RFP it, but then you really have to figure out something to do that. But I still think we have to have an opportunity to buy used equipment, and how we do it, and it needs to be very, you know, has to be documented somehow, some way. So I'll throw that on the table. Thoughts? North Dundas did it for years. They had their director of public works at times had a blank check to buy used equipment, and some of that used equipment is still floating around that municipality. They don't do it anymore because that director's left, but he saved North Dundas and the old township of Winchester a lot of money because of the way he did it. Do I recommend everything he did? No, because I do remember the time he bought a cabin chassis without an engine for the fire department and had to buy the engine, put that in, and then put the equipment on top. And it's too convoluted. I understand you don't want to do all that. But then, you know, there was a suggestion the other night of, you know, we're looking at a water tanker down the road for the fire departments, and, you know, if the fire department says, well, the tanker's good, all we need is new cabin chassis, that might be something to look at. Those kind of ideas have to be at least somewhere within the policy, because there's nothing worse than somebody said, well, we can't do it because it doesn't say in here, and you got to have some flexibility in that.
Yeah, actually it was brought up the other day by staff as far as how we go about purchasing used equipment, and doesn't speak to it in the procurement policy, but if it's something that council wants to look at, we can definitely add something in there. My thought would be is if staff is looking at wanting to purchase a used equipment, they come to council with a report saying we want to purchase a used whatever. Here's a range that we think we can get one within, and if council's comfortable with that, then they go out and, whether it's Gov Deals or wherever, can purchase between that range and that range only.
Now, we did buy that, purchase the used compactor,
Correct.
but I would consider that it was refurbished.
Right.
And actually, that guesstimate was blown out of the water when we actually got it,
Right.
so.
Yeah, that doubled.
Yeah, so staff's gonna do that, they have to do the research.
They do the research first, they know exactly what range they could get one of their type with the hours or whatever, and then they come back with council saying, we can purchase this for a range between here and here, and if council's comfortable with that, then that to me gives staff the direction to go ahead, only within those perimeters though.
Yeah.
I don't know, just a thought. We can definitely talk about it more at a staff level and come up with some different recommendations to bring back to council, if council's interested.
Councilor Mellon?
I agree with what you're saying, Mayor Byvells. Could it be something we might want to look at, and staff could come back at budget time and say, okay, we want to buy a tractor, but we need it all spec'd out. Like Mayor Byvells said, you don't want to buy something that you're going to regret. So if they spec'd out, okay, we want to buy X number of tractor, it has to have, if they had all the specs, and we said, okay, we'll allocate a dollar amount at budget time. I mean, if staff has to, and I know what you're saying, and it's very open and transparent, but if they have to come back to a council meeting, they find one, they come back, we missed a grader one time by 24 hours. If we can find the product, because sometimes they'll move fast, if it's a good deal, it may be gone by the time we come back to a council meeting, I found X number of piece of equipment. I don't know, and that gives staff a lot of leeway, but it has to be approved by council, the specs on the tractor, what the dollar amount would be, the max dollar amount or the minimum max or whatever. And then have it checked out, and if possible, have it checked by our mechanic, if it's local, but.
You're asking a lot, I'll tell
Yeah,
you that right now.
I know, that's the trouble, but I mean, I know what you're coming from, and sometimes those good deals will be there, but they'll be there for like 48 hours. And you miss out on, that would be the way I personally would envision it, I guess, if you will. We do it at budget time. Staff would have to come back with a very defined plan and specs and what they're looking for, what they like, and maybe they'll never find it at that price or what we'll allocate at budget time. But lo and behold, if one pops up on Eastern Ontario farm equipment sales, or if it does pop up, we don't want to miss it, because
It's totally up to council as far as, if you want to only have it at budget time where, you authorize used equipment that staff can go and purchase if they come across one, we can do it that way. Or, there might be used equipment that comes out throughout the year that, in say June, that we know we're going to purchase next year. It might be a good time to get it now. You want to leave it open, I think, too, right?
I think we need a bit of planning.
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell you that right now, because you're right now, we don't have time on our side,
Right.
as Councilor Mellon alluded to. So, I think if staff come back at budget time and say, we want this piece of equipment, it's gonna cost X for a new one, but we feel we can spend X minus 25% on a used one.
Yep.
Council would basically say, that's the dollar figure you got. If you go find something and you make sure you have some description of specs, then we have to trust them to do their job.
Right.
Unfortunately, because if you have to wait, they gotta come to a council meeting, and then by that time, most dealers are not gonna hang on forever if somebody, because I've been in somebody else is coming along this afternoon, what are you gonna do?
yeah.
Yeah.
You literally have to trust whoever you're gonna do it, and you wanna make sure that you do make that judgment at budget time.
I mean, something like that, Mayor Byvells, and the director, the CAO, and pile more onto you. A phone call, say, we got this, if we act today, I can get this tractor or piece of equipment, if we allocate it and, do it.
Well, I guess that would be you can make it part of your emergency purchasing, but it wouldn't be emergency. It's
No.
a planned purchase with with,
Last
you
minute.
couldn't spend, your box is this, as long as it's within that box, CEO and mayor can approve it. To be honest, if it's beyond the box, then I still say the five of us have to make that deal every, for the most part. Every once in a while you can't, and, we get situations where CEO and I decide that we have to spend a few more dollars because it makes sense long-term, and council ends up having to live with it. But for the most part, that does not happen here. So we'll go around again, and then we'll talk about some of those concerns that Sarah had, but we'll probably have a small break. Anything more on
Into those concerns you're referring to, Sarah, I guess, is the minor irregularities in the tendering? Okay, I don't, well, can we get, I don't know, okay, do we get into it's sort of spelled out here when we do request for proposals, when we do tendering and whatnot. Can we touch on, I'm not totally sold on some of it. Request for proposals on smaller projects maybe, but, and then it relates all back to when the timing. If the timing for tenders can get out early enough, it gives all the contractors out there, whether it's general contractors, building or whatever, but I personally like tendering. I know it's can be more time consuming and whatnot, but I sort of like, I've always been a big fan of tendering. I realize you don't want to be tendering for every maybe little thing, but and then we were talking about whether we expand on our procurement, our procurement policy, So we can touch on that if you want to later or now. Like, are we going to expand, on what we generally, for our procurement policy for general stuff. So if we're going to expand on some of that, like maybe bring a carpenter into play, if we're going to, some of that stuff, yes. But I think any capital expenditures, especially capital or any larger tender amounts, I'm not really much comfortable over 25. Maybe $5,000 without tendering. And that's just my little.
It's pretty small.
Yeah, I know it is small, and
Can't
maybe
do
that's
much
a
with
number
that.
we
I'm
can
sorry.
juggle.
You can't
But
do much with
I'm
that.
a tender person, so I know maybe council doesn't agree with me on that, and that's fine. But that's
I can be realistic. I think that dollar figure is a little too low.
yeah. Request for proposals or request for quotations on some of that stuff. But what is a dollar figure now that we tender out at? Is there a dollar figure that that automatically jumps into a tender category?
Sarah, you have
Over
that?
25,000.
Over 25,000.
Yeah.
I don't know. To me, that's maybe a little bit high. Maybe I'm just a little old-fashioned. Maybe I'm still stuck back in the 70s, and I still like tendering. But I realize there's time and there's money and whatnot, and tendering, especially if you have to have engineers come in, and you can spend a couple $1,000 on engineer and specs and stuff, so it doesn't make sense. But
Okay,
yeah.
go ahead.
I thought we're gonna go around and just then do a break or then come
Okay.
back.
So part of this discussion that we haven't had is the point Sarah's brought up, correct? Let's have a 5-minute break and we'll bring that back, please. So for the most part, we've gone through that. Let's go and deal with Sarah's list here and make sure that the discussion items are where we want to go. So go ahead, Sarah, and start basically from the top to the bottom, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, so the next thing I wanted to talk about was written quotations. So this is on page 13. This is for procurement for most departments for projects valued at $5,000 to $25,000. There was a suggestion from council to amend this section so that any project requiring quotations is advertised in the local newspaper to ensure all local bidders have an opportunity to bid. So in conversation with the lawyer who reviewed this policy, we aren't recommending this change. The reason for this is advertising is costly, and it also puts a constraint on staff in terms of timing and efficiency. When we have to advertise small projects, it adds in a time delay that could add weeks onto a project when the outcome might be the same if the director was to contact 3 companies for quotes. The recommendation would be when staff brings a capital budget to council, we will have a summary page of all capital projects and the procurement method for those projects based on the project value. At that time, if council sees that there's a project that they want us to advertise for instead of obtaining 3 quotes, we can make those decisions at that time. My concern is that if we make the change to advertise all projects that fall in this category, we would be incurring unnecessary advertising expenses because, for example, the water, wastewater department and fire department, they make purchases from companies that aren't local due to the specific nature of those departments and their product needs. It makes more sense for them to contact the specific companies for quotes instead of advertising. Council could also consider utilizing the bids and tenders program we're going to talk about later. If the municipality goes that route for certain projects we want to advertise. I can answer any questions council has on this.
Okay. Go ahead.
You know, I've been in the position where I have to get 3 quotes for something. I agree whenever it's a very specialized service. That seems like an utter waste of time. Is there any time though where you would think, where it would be like a generalized thing that they would be purchasing? I don't think so. I mean, the concern is if it's a more general in nature and you just always go to the same 3, then you're closing out the other folks that potentially could provide service or provide whatever, and as well as the price being somewhat predetermined. So I don't know. Can you think of one, Sarah, where that wouldn't? I mean, it's worked for me in the past. The 3 quotes. It's never, but it's generally speaking, it's when I'm very specific for what I'm looking for, and there's not a lot of.
I think operationally, there's certain companies that directors do continually go to. Whenever it comes to capital projects, though, for budget, we want them to reach out to 3 companies and get quotes. I guess sometimes there isn't 3 companies available, so we have them document that, so there is record.
Yeah, I mean, with the 3 quotes, technically you could do it online, right? One could be 2 could be over the phone, and then one is online or whatever. Yeah, and I mean, like I said, it works extremely well. Only in those cases where you have a lot and it's the same vendor gets it all the time. That can be problematic.
Yeah, and I think, you know, to what Sarah said earlier is the new capital listing that's going to be brought to council for next year's budget will have a section on how we look at tendering, whether it's tender, RFP, RFQ. If council feels that some of the RFQ are more general in nature, then they can provide a different method to procure. So,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Sounds good.
Louis?
I have no problem with the 3 quotes, especially in those 2 departments, because a lot of stuff that they need is specialty items that not everybody carries, but there is also certain items in those departments that you can get almost off the shelf anywhere. But no, I have no problem with that whatsoever.
Councilor Mellon?
Yeah, I do like that idea there, Sarah, when you know, at budget time, giving us the option of how we, you know, request proposal or quotation or whatever. I guess my issue is, well, if we go for a request for proposal or request for quotation, we still have to have a fairly, we want to make sure we're comparing apples to apples. You know, we have to have maybe not quite the extent of an engineer tendering document, but we got to make sure that, you know, we're getting 2x4s on the walls. If we want 2x6s, we should be getting, you know, because there could be some differences there. And I like, you know, make sure that, you know, everybody is sort of giving us a price on the same thing, basic same thing. There can be variances, I guess, if you will, that won't maybe affect the longevity of a project, if you, whether it's a building or, you know, but as long as there's those specifications somewhere in that request for proposal or request for quotation, I'm somewhat okay with it. Right now, when we go, if we're going to request a proposal or request for quotations, how do we send that out is that in the paper, or is it, if we have a list of contractors, if you will, no, that's not recurring services though, is it?
No, it's totally different.
No, it's a little different, okay. I'll back that, you know, it's just that sometimes I've heard contractors say, oh, I didn't know that was, you know, and, you know, we can advertise it 6 ways from Sunday, but there's still gonna be contractors that, you know, oh, I didn't know you were contracting that, you know. I had one mention that to me when we painted Matilda Hall. Oh, I didn't know you were, you would, you know. But those ones are gonna get, you know, that's, I don't know. We still need to advertise and make sure that everybody knows it's out there. You know, extensively, you know, as much. We can't rely totally on our website because some people won't look at it on a regular basis and they miss some stuff. And you know, we're looking at between 5 and 25,000 for that.
Yes, for written quotations.
Yeah, request for quotation. I you know, I still think if we only get one, what is your game plan on a request for quotation?
It depends on the project, because sometimes there is maybe only one company that can do that kind of, if it's specialized work.
Yeah,
But if it's something in general, then we do want the directors to make sure they get 3 quotes.
yeah, and I agree, like a specialty item, whatever, you know, yes. But in other areas, if we don't get 3 quotes or bids,
They will also document too on if they're unable to get 3 bids. So say they're only able to get 2, but they reached out to 5. Maybe 2 companies got back and said, yeah, we're not interested in bidding. That's all documented as part of the file. So because the auditors will look at it at year end too, they'll take our procurement policy and they'll look at capital projects and say, are they in line with how we made our purchases?
because when I look at this, like, you know, with our drainage work, there can be several drains that maybe would fall under that, would fall into that category. And that's where I have a little bit of an issue with it, I guess, you know, on drainage work. You know,
I think you have to make sure you look at it broadly.
look at it, what's that?
Look at it broadly. Don't,
Yeah.
you're being very specific, and I don't think that. And
Yeah, I know,
I
it's-
think you're taking the heat we've gotten in the last 2 months, and we've gotten over that. There's a bigger list. That's a different bear, but when you're talking about small stuff that needs to be built within the spec, how do we do it and do it fairly? And in the end, I guess it's a matter of trust between who's the director who's dealing with it, or staff who's dealing with it, and council, and how broadly we want to spec. We can't, I suspect even with all the advertising we've done, unless you're a contractor that literally sits on Friday afternoon and looks for work, we're not going to get everybody. And in the end, we can't make everybody aware. How do we do it? We can't. Unless
No.
we send something to every general blast out there, we got to be realistic. Like, To me, 3 quotes on any project is reasonable. But I agree, you can't land up with the 3 same people every time either, because then you will end up with one all the time.
Yeah.
And the optics of that may not look good, whether it's right or wrong.
No, and a lot of it goes back to what I've already alluded to, the timing of these will be, it will be critical. Like we gotta make sure that the timing is done in such a way that, you know, it gives everybody that opportunity. I'm really not a big fan of, you know, how we did it before when we would tender in September or October for work in November, you know.
But that's different, that's a different bear. Let's get that out of your head, because we can't be here all day on that. So let's concentrate on the written quotation theory and where we want to go. Staff is saying 3 is good, we'll find 3, we're not going to advertise, yes or no? And we've been recommended by legal not to do that. So, and I know Councillor Wells is biting at the bit for this, so.
I'll maybe defer my comment, if you will, Mayor Byvells, for just on that, you know, just for.
I just don't want you to get stuck in the mud.
I know.
I think you are right now.
Yeah.
Councillor Wells.
That's a good one.
Well, we're spinning a lot of tires and not getting anywhere.
Okay, Sarah, I like the idea about what staff's coming up with the budget thing, to whether we go out for RFQ or RFP. I think that's at that time, that saves a lot of headaches, that we can direct staff how to go about it. As far as like reoccurring services, I think we should, the 5,000 down is good. If a door has to be put in or filters have to be changed over or whatever. And the specialty things like what Dennis goes through with your UV filters and all that stuff, that is, myself, is that's probably the only really specialty stuff we would have, like as far as the waste plant and the water plant and that goes.
Fire.
And, well,
Yeah, fire equipment, there's only so many companies that can
but
build
there'd
us
be more
a
companies
toy.
in fire equipment than there would in.
Yes, but it's not an extensive list.
Yeah, but something like that, like you would have your guys that you would have on file, like you send an email, so okay, we need so many UV filters for this, and just using that for example, and just go out there. Be no out in the paper or whatever. The 5,000 and 25,000, I think, and Councillor Lewis said this a lot about using our own contractors. I don't think there's any reason, I agree not with the paper, but I think there's no reason that we can't have on record, like you can even go in the phone book and find out there's like 8 or 9 small general contractors that would build a $15,000 building or do this. So if you have them all on file, that, okay, you, because St. Lawrence Parks Commission does this all the time, and not saying we have to follow that, but they would go out and send like invitation out, and you would CC everyone on that. Okay, this is the scope of work. There, like, then you send in, you don't have to, there's your deadline to get it in, and see who does it. Simple as that. Same with going even with drainage. We have enough contractors. There's 4 or 5 different contractors now, a couple new ones for high-ho work and that in the municipality where you have them online. And you have a ditch, you have whatever to, you don't go to the paper, especially for the RFQs, you just CC everyone, we're doing this, and then we'll have our own separate RFQ thing that can be as simple as 4 or 5 pages with your scope of work and the time frames. And you can put in there, like, we like to have this done by a certain time, so and go from that. So everyone be happy with it. RFTs, definitely 25,000. Always go with RFT. It's your best bang for your buck. And going down to your other thing is about a performance bond and bid deposit and stuff like that. There was things in there, you're saying up to 50,000 for a performance bond. Any job over, like, well, not say 25 to 100, that 50% is fine, but anything 100,000 and up, I would, in your RFT, would definitely put in there that it's going to be a 100% performance bond, or you get in a situation where part of the job there's more labor intense because you can go for, there's a labor, you can have 50% labor, 50% performance bond. So by doing that, that frees the company up, because when you go out for the bond, you can get one for like 50% labor, because it's all billed to the companies and contractors. It's so much per thousand. So in the best interest of the municipality to keep that they're getting their 100% guaranteed, it doesn't all have to be in a performance bond, because if you go half, that eliminates the contractor. Now he's fulfilled his obligation as far as labor. The only thing would be the performance if the work doesn't hold up or whatever. So it just gives that contractor less money he has to put out if it's split up, because it's more for a performance bond than is for a labor bond. Like, say if right now, like I know on job I pay $11 per thousand of the job, but on the labor part it could be as low as 5 to 6. So if you don't make them put it all in there, because that cost actually comes back to us at the end of the day, those bid deposit, the performance bonds, labor bonds, everything comes back. So if we word it depending on, and it's every job's going to be different, but that's the way I would go about that. Like when you're doing your RFP and you put it in your procurement, that okay, a certain amount, we ask for that, and depending on the job. So like you allude to, the audits say, okay, that's exactly, everything is in there. So it works good for the contractors and us too.
Yeah, we did that same type for the water tower. So we did a 50% labor and a 50% performance.
Because there's a lot of labor on those jobs.
Absolutely.
So, and that'll get us a cheaper rate by wording it that way in your RFP.
Yeah.
What else? I had something else. What the frig was it? Councillor Wells, you should have wrote that down. Wait, I guess that's the way I would take it for all our thing. I think it's important, especially with those jobs, 25,000 down to 5,000. As far like this year, we had a couple small buildings that had to be built. If you just went out to all the local contractors and just CC everyone, and this is what, like, it's not hard to get their email. Everyone knows, and then you go from there. Or once a year, you put in, say at the beginning of each year, or fiscal year, say if it starts January 1st or whatever, you put an ad in for services that if you want to be put on a list for carpentry service, plumbing service, on whatever, send your emails in, then everything's there. That it's, we went out to the paper and we asked all the, it's not like us just calling up Alan Black or Robert Jordan or Morseburg Plumbing or whatever. Like, we put it out in the paper once a year, then you're put on a list, and that's how you would get,
Yeah, so
I think.
we do that with our recurring services. So every 2 years we go out and we have, your plumbers, your electricians, all that stuff. There's a few things that we've made some changes that when we go out next year, maybe carpentry, maybe having, or general contractors as a per hour. Those might be things we want to add to our recurring services so that we have, so we have a full list.
You can,
right?
because all we're going with the recurring services is 5,000 down. So anything over and above that,
Yep.
it has to go for RFQ anyways.
Yep.
So, or even RFP. But at the end of the day, I think if staff had that, you could go in there for your 25,000 down to 5,000 and go out to whatever, whether it's a contractor, whether it's a electrical or HVAC or whatever. If it falls in there, you just send out staff as much as CC everyone on it. There's our little scope of work and our little 4 to 5 page thing. Submit your price by this and go from there. It's a matter of 5 minutes on your thing, as far as, I don't know how, I wouldn't want to see, say Dave go out and if he needs a little building built or like say like a $15,000 building and you go out and you call EFB or someone like to do a scope for you, where like as directors they have to go and put it in and like bring it to you or bring it to someone, a little knowledge on it, or like buildings could be Nicole, water, stuff like that, where you go over your scope of work, so it saves the public that we're not paying all these consulting fees or engineering fees, because there's like a lot of little jobs like 25,000 down, unless it's going to be a specialty item that, well, in that case we're going to call the company anyways for that thing to provide it. But as far as like little stuff, like I've seen it here different times, even when as a counselor and even when I wasn't, like like you get the engineering firm over there for that thing there to put a foam closure in. We were charged $1,000 for that. Like those are no-brainers as far as when it comes to staff, how to save money going with your RFQs and RFPs and all that. The RFTs, well, that's a different ball game. It's a tender thing, which will the engineers and consultants, like once you get up in that stuff, you have to have them. But the 25,000 down, there's a lot of that stuff we can do ourselves and save the public money. That's it for me, Mayor.
Okay. I think as long as staff do their best to find as many quotes as possible, because like sometimes you go, oh, I only need 3 and then I'm done. Well, if we have a list, if we can construct a list, and to be honest, the list can be South Dundas contractors, but they can be also quote unquote local people from other municipalities that can still do the work for us. And I know people don't like that, but you know, I want to make sure that our contractors can go out of our municipality to go do work for North Dundas or South Stormont or Cardinal too. So it works both ways in this municipal world. So I think that's something we can try to accomplish. I think there were some ideas here, try to make a list and see if we can make that work, but we don't want to get stuck, well, we got 3 and that's good enough. Anything else on that section? Yeah.
One thing, and I agree with what you're saying with that protectionism thing, and I've seen it in the past where, you know, if we were only going to go with South Dundas contractors in South Dundas might think that's wonderful, but they could get shut out of work, and I've seen it happen, where work has not been granted to contractors from South Dundas because it was actually in Matilda days. So we want to be careful there. In page 28, Sarah and council, like where contracts can bid like where are we here? Under 25,000. Okay, I can read, and Councillor Wells makes a lot of good points. But should the CAO not be signing off on that because it says approval required by the director? Which is fine, but I would feel more comfortable if, you know, as, you know, would that not be something that maybe we should put in there, you know, for, you know, a job at 24,500, the director can approve it. Only a director. I think, you know, personally, I would much sooner have your signature or your overview on that too, to look it over, Shannon.
I think, you know, you get a couple of things. I think you need to put the trust in the directors that, you know, at budget time, it's approved by council anyways as far as how we are going to proceed. So as long as it stays within that scope of that budget, it's signed off by the directors. If it's over, then they come to me anyways, or the treasurer to say, okay, it's over budget. You got to bring a report back to council. How are we going to finance it, or do we need to go back out again? So there's a different variables, but I think we got to put the trust in the directors that it's approved at budget time, and as long as they follow the process as a procurement policy, and they're within those lines, then they sign off.
And not saying that we don't trust the directors, but it could actually prevent us, if you will, not trusting the directors if we know that the CAO, who is reportable to us, is, has seen this. Because I don't want, the director to sign off on that and then council say, holy crap, we didn't want that, or we didn't like that, or that shouldn't have been done that way, and we look at you and you say, I didn't see it.
Yep.
I don't want to hear that. I'm not sure you haven't looked at it.
Yep.
I'm not saying you have to oversee it, but be aware of it and maybe sign off
Yep.
on it.
The other thing,
More work for you maybe, but
the other thing too is any report that comes to council in regards to awarding. So even if we're not doing an RFT, it still has to come back to council after we've gone ahead with it, just to update council. So through a report, it gets reviewed by the treasurer, and it also gets reviewed by myself too before it goes to council agenda. So there's ways that we would look at that stuff and catch it beforehand if need be. So if there was any concern, it would not be on the agenda. It would be discussed with the director.
yeah, because I listened to the
Yep.
schedule, and approval required, and I
Yep.
was just thinking, okay, well, a director could sign off and.
But ultimately, council has, if the council wants stricter guidelines as far as signing off, then that's up to council as far as how they want to proceed. But there's measures in place that would prevent that.
We're just actioning items, right? Like the staff is actioning something that's already been approved at budget and stuff like that. I think it's a little micro-y to have it come back because it's already been discussed publicly and approved and everything else. They're just actioning the item, right?
Right, and I think if the extra
Yeah.
step that Sarah's put in this year as far as what method of procurement we're going to use, whether it's RFQ, RFP, RFT, that's going to be all approved at budget time from council. So they're going to already have what their limit is for the budget, how we're procuring, and then they follow, as long as they stay within those guidelines, there's no reason.
I guess there's enough checks and balances in there to look after, okay.
Yeah, I mean, where the hot water is if there's an item that's being budgeted, gone out, and built that's
Correct.
never been discussed
Correct, exactly right.
in this room, then that's where
That's a
you're gonna.
performance issue.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, so you've heard our concerns on number 2, Schedule C, number 12. I'm going to say I think council would like to have that flexibility, and they can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that second statement you put in there has a lot of merit, which is, other irregularities. So that'd be on Schedule C. Number 12. So on page 24. Was your intent to take it right out?
The intent was to leave it the same. That's the recommendation. I guess there's pros and cons to however council decides to proceed. So the way the policy is written right now is it's restrictive, but it gives staff clear direction when there are irregularities that occur. We've had situations in the past where we've had to reject a lower bid due to the type of irregularity that has occurred, which it's unfortunate for the municipality from a financial perspective. But if we were to change the section to provide more flexibility, the caution is that we'd be setting new precedents when tenders come in with irregularities. It has the potential to open the municipality up to more challenges if a company felt we weren't applying the same treatment consistently when there's irregularities. So we are recommending that it would stay the same. But whenever we discuss bids and tenders, if we do proceed with that kind of system, it would eliminate a lot of the compliance issues that we've seen in the past.
Okay, so your recommendation is leave it the way it is.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, like I'd outlined a couple things here, like name of signature or supplier vendor is missing or incomplete. That's a major irregularity, automatic rejection. Yeah, I can see where you're coming from, Sarah. And then there's another one, failure to insert the supplier's business name in the space provided in the solicitation form. Major irregularity. We don't want, I guess, yeah, you're right. It might very well open us up to a whole can of trouble. Yeah, sorry. I'm done.
Councilor
I'm good with that. Like say if a contractor adds up the numbers wrong and it's out by $10, well, should he lose? No, it goes back and I think it's be good, like small stuff like that, which is permissible, is good to go.
Okay, so we'll leave it the way it is. Anything else on the procurement policy that you need to know from council?
No, I think that covers everything.
Okay, then we'll move on to the key information report on bids and tenders. Which is way down. Oh, I passed it. So is Catherine doing this?
No, Sarah will be doing
Sarah's
No,
doing
I
it?
will.
Okay,
I
Sarah,
will.
go ahead then. Am I just going by the name on it?
The staff is looking into implementing an online platform for our tender process. So currently the municipality uses page per submissions, which can result in some inconsistencies and compliance issues. So by using an integrated service like bids and tenders, it captures everything to do with our tender process into one system. The web page would be customized to South Dundas and has no cost to the municipality. The only cost would be training for the system, which is $1,200 plus HST for a half-day session. This would be recorded and could be used for future training for new users. Bids and tenders is a vendor pay system where the vendors could either register annually or one time. So the annual cost to a vendor to register is $175.05 plus HST, or they can do a one-time submission fee of $52.38 plus HST. There's also the option where the municipality would pay the fee, and it's based off of population size. However, it's my understanding that hardly any of the municipalities that use this service do this option. They use the vendor pay model. There's close to 300 municipalities that use this system in Ontario. Currently, none of the municipalities in Sdmc use it, but City of Cornwall is a current user. The biggest positive for using this system would be the compliance rate, where the system currently has a 99.62% compliance rate because the system does not allow a vendor to proceed unless all of the required information is submitted, all addendums are acknowledged, and all requirements of the tender are met. From a vendor side of things, upon registering, they'd have access to a personalized dashboard where they'd have access to all other tenders available on the site. It wouldn't just be South Dundas tenders. There's the ability to set up email alerts for new tenders posted, and the system can customize a bid list depending on the type of company. So this would speak to Councillor Wells' point earlier about having a list of contractors. If we wanted to send out an email, if the vendor registered, then they would be getting all the notifications for our tenders. Now, staff believe the system would be beneficial in managing tenders going forward, as would house all aspects of the tender process into one system. So we can store vendor evaluations, performance security information, and any other documents pertaining to the tender within this system. I can answer any questions that council has.
Councillor Wells?
Yes, Sarah. Like there's several different companies out there. Like you got Bids and Tenders, Merck's, Bitago, Bravo, Solution. And you were saying about like a $1,200 fee. Like with a lot of these companies, why couldn't we go out for tender to have like Bravo, or I know you said there's no costs involved, but I know the parks, they go out, like right now they're on Bravo Solutions, and before it was a RFP that went out from the province to companies, and I'm sure there's more of this, like these, actually 3 of these companies are the ones I deal with, but that you go out and, okay, you guys want us to provide for you, like you should waive the $1,200 fee because we're putting on them, we're creating an income for them by us putting our RFTs on their site.
The $1,200 fee is just for like a training session for staff to learn how to use the system.
Yeah,
So
which I mean, if you
the vendor
actually,
fee is $175.
yeah,
The
that's for
system doesn't cost us anything except
No,
the
I
training. and
realize
it's
that,
the
but it
vendors that have to pay, if they want to pay.
Yeah, like you, all these, like Merck's Bitigo, is you pay an annual subscription. They'll send you all the stuff, and at the end of the day, whether you go with bid and tenders or Merck's or Bitigo or any of them, like when there's RFT out, we still have to send all the addendums to them, like, and they'll send them out to all the people. Their job is when they're taking drawings, or whoever takes drawings, once you direct all the addendums and questions and everything, it goes through these companies, and they're the ones that put it out to the people that actually took drawings on them. And could be like on situations like this, like if it's a big project, you will, like bid and tenders, say take the money if there's $100 to get a set of drawings. Is the bid and tenders going to take care of that, or is the municipality going to take that? Because you said about saving work, which you probably will as far as going out for thing, but we still have to do all the addendums and questions that don't go through these companies. It goes through the municipality. The municipality directs whoever we're using that free of charge to, okay, there's addendum 1, addendum 2. You would send it to bid and tenders, and they would go out to all the people that took drawings.
Yeah, so the bids and tender system would facilitate all of that. So if a contractor had a question on our tender, they'd submit it through the bids and tenders portal. And then our response to that would be issued in an addendum to anybody who has looked at this tender or is interested in the tender.
Because really, like you could go on all these. You could go on more than one if you wanted to. If you wanted to go on Bravo or Merck's or Bitigo, like you could get a ride. Like most of all these, like here, like me as a contractor, I'm on all three of them, so I would get it 3 times. But it'd be something for the staff. I do agree for like big projects like this to use this instead of the way we've been doing it with the paper and stuff like that. You get a wide range of contractors by going with this. And when you're dealing with $2 million jobs and stuff like that, well, I'm not worrying just about South Dundas. I want whoever, like the best possible bang for our bucks. So again, I agree with the bid and tenders. I've personally, actually, I've never used them. But maybe reach out and look at other, like Bravo and Bitigo and all that. And like Bitigo is a big one for municipalities too. Like a lot of municipality stuff. Like you'll see it right from Windsor right down through the Quebec border, where like there's a lot of municipalities that use that. And I'm sure you're saying about 300 with this one. Those 300 municipalities that use bid and tenders are probably using more than one. Oh, he had his hand up. I was just waiting.
Okay,
for
sorry.
Just no. In addition to, we're not saying that this is be the only module we'll use. I think to start the online platform, you've got to try one, get it to where you need to be, see the benefits of it, and then from there, it could expand into other platforms. The other benefit I see from this too is the bids and tenders one that we've gone through is we can look at all the other bids and tenders that are out there across Ontario. So it gives staff an opportunity to look at other tenders, how they're being done, and we can take tenders that are being done for, say, for road work, and we can utilize that,
And you can
that
copy and
format,
paste
and we can
on it,
use it for our own purpose. So there's a lot of other benefits from that.
And
right?
like I
So-
said, Shannon, I fully like this is the step for the way to go for like our big RFT stuff. Like it's the day of just putting in the Morrisburg Leader and the papers and that for big projects like this is like we have this there at no cost. We should utilize it. And
We want a bigger audience. We want more competitive bidding so that at the end of the day, the municipality gets the best price for the job, right? And I think this does that. It reaches out a larger group, and it makes sure that when people are submitting their bids, if they don't have everything completed, they cannot submit. So we're not going to be dealing with, well, we had to reject this bid or this bid or this bid. It's on them.
yeah, and
Right?
like that's right. You send it in to them.
Yep.
They're basically doing the contractor a favor. At the end of the day, okay, you send that in electronically early.
Yep.
Okay, it's got to be there. the RFP closes tomorrow, well, and son, you forgot this, you forgot that.
Correct.
Then you go back and you resubmit it, and I think it's a wonderful idea. It helps, and I like the idea about the tender thing too, where you can go and look.
Yep.
Okay, like, well, we're gonna build that flower bed over there. How did Peel Region or whoever do a tender for that flower bed? It just, you can draw from that, then we can do our own format up and just change the name or whatever. I think it's good stuff.
Okay,
That's
just
it.
to clarify, this would cover tenders, RFPs, written quotations?
No.
No.
It can cover written quotations. I think to start, the plan would be to do all of our tenders and RFPs, but it can be used for any of our written quotations as well.
Okay, just want to clarify that. Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, it can be used, but I would like this system for our RFPs, like the 25,000, and for our RFQs, keep it more personal, that our local residents have the chance to bid on jobs like that. Like I wouldn't use bid and tenders to go out to build a little building or something. I would stick to what we just had our discussion on there earlier about RFQs.
The online platform currently right now supports about 80% is RFTs and RFPs, and then the rest of it is RFQs. So it's a small percentage of the
Yeah.
RFQs.
And like I said, that's all in flavor, whatever we decide. But I think with staying with our RFQ with 25,000 under is a more personal thing that we're getting an email from the municipality. Okay, we're doing this little $10,000 project. Would you like to participate in it? And as far as the rest, the RFQ or the RFT and up is, I think it's thumbs up for you guys for this.
Council Mellon?
Well, some of my questions are confusion, I guess, if you will. It's sort of an answer with the tender and the request for a quotation and what falls under there. When do we sign up for a length of, like, is this, I guess, if we will, a contract between us and this company for a 2-year period, is it? So if we wanted to terminate, say we didn't after a year, we wanted to terminate, is there any issues? Or I saw something in here on, like, part 5 and I don't know what page it is, 57, termination. And I'm not sure, I was confused, to be honest with you. Is that the termination between us and the supplier, this company, or between the vendors and this company? Can we terminate this if, say, in a year's time, we don't think this is something we want to use? Is there a penalty, if you will, for us to withdraw before the 2-year period, or?
I'm just looking here to see.
Yeah, because it says termination of
Yeah, so customer.
HSA by customer.
Yeah, customer, which we would be the customer if we sign up.
We would be the customer.
Right.
Well, then
So
there's
we would
written
give
notice
60
to
days
the
notice.
e-solutions, and upon payment of the remaining fees of the services for the term. What fees would
There
that
would
be?
be no fees. There'd be no fees because we're going to take the option of having the contractor pay. So
So
we can get clarification if council decides to go down that road. If we don't,
Nothing,
we just don't use it anymore, it
yeah.
just sits there, right? And it
There's
just
nothing.
become,
Yeah, I just
Right.
wonder, when I saw that termination and
Right.
payment of
So-
fees, I'm thinking, well, where's the fees coming
12
from?
months down the road, we decide, okay, this is not the way we want to go. The
Don't post
platform just
anything.
sits there for the next
Yeah.
12 months until the contract
Yeah.
expires. Doesn't cost us anything.
Yeah. I was a little apprehensive on the smaller jobs, but I think it's sort of been spoken to, I guess, if you will, that, for the request for proposals, doesn't fall under here. We could, but I don't know if maybe that's the best use of that, but I sort of question whether or not I guess we'll have enough, uptake by contractors, but, local contractors, but like, contractors from all over. Yeah, okay, that's all for right now, Mayor Bybills.
Council Lewis?
I think this is a great way to go. But I also have to agree with Councillor Wells. I think the 25,000 and below, we have to stick with our local contractors. 25,000 and over, I think this is a great way to go. And it's going to save a lot of paperwork, a lot of time, and it's going to give office staff, will say, more time to do other things. Other than that, I read it. It sounds good, and it's worth a try. Thank you.
Mayor?
What's the compliance rate now? It's just in it, it said that with this, there's a 99.62% compliance rate. What roughly would it be now in our current way of doing things?
It's hard to say. I mean, I guess speaking from experience, I guess this year, I want to say with almost every tender, there's been maybe one that we've had to reject because of just minor errors.
Okay.
But maybe Shannon had more.
Yeah, no, I would say based on the last few tenders, there's at least been 1 to 2 that we've had to reject due to just something
So your
small.
compliance rate's probably around 75 then?
Yeah, I would say,
Okay.
yeah, probably 75%.
So that's a nice jump. I
Yep.
mean, at 99.62. I have no problem with this program. I think it elevates. I would look to use it as much as we possibly can. I think that we have some contractors that will do small jobs, but they will also do large jobs, and I think it's important to provide that consistency and get the users used to using it. I think that anytime you have, it'll help with record keeping for sure. I think that's a huge bonus. And I think the one thing I would question about is the training though. That I see the 1,200, I think you have to be trained on it. It's pointless to get a program that you don't know the little ins and outs of. But just wondering with new staff or new hires or whatever, if they have an online training module that is included in part of the program, that would be interesting because I'm assuming that in the 1,200 is probably in person. That's why it's $1,200. Or is it an online?
Yeah, I think it's
portal?
a combination of online, but also some setup as well too.
Okay,
Right?
so it would be interesting to see what their standard online process is, like they're for training. It probably comes with it, so you'd have to make sure that you're getting a return for that $1,200 if they're including the online modules
Sure.
anyway.
Okay.
So that's it.
Okay, anything
The
else?
$1,200 is optional. It's unlimited. It's an unlimited attendance option for training, and it's for like basically, I'd say all directors. It's like a broad, but there is some more specific training that is included.
Yeah, it's just
The people that would be like
Yes.
administering it.
You really want to get the benefit of having someone in person versus them just going through their online training one-on-one. Because there's not, generally speaking, there's not very, because with your staff, Shannon, you're going to have 1 or 2 that click on it, do it super quick, and then can spread their knowledge. So
What I would like to see is actually have one staff within this office that spearheads that platform that would be your go-to as far as if you need questions, concerns, whatever. I would like to have one person.
So
that
the
would have
term
spirit.
we use is subject matter expert, and they call it a SME.
Okay,
So
there you
it's
go.
always helpful when you have a SME for
So you have one that goes through the whole entire training process that kind of knows everything, and then it gets delivered then to your directors and stuff like that.
It's not a huge amount, but $1,200 is still $1,200, and
absolutely.
I'd really want to see the benefit
Correct.
if they're providing the online modules anyway. So
Agreed.
Okay. Anything else?
No, I like that. What was the name of that first? That's kind of different name, but anyways, I do agree with something like that where you have one, like you're spending the $1,200 training, where all departments would send their addendums in and this, me, whatever, would direct it back to bids and tenders. Very good.
subject matter expert.
Exactly. Other than that, I'm good with everything else, Mayor.
Okay, Council Mellon?
No, I agree. I'm just, we had talked about other suppliers, that have this same type of program. So they don't have exclusive you know, we can't, can we go out and use another one? If we like it, we can take in another program and similar to get more exposure?
We could have 5 different online platforms if we wanted to. Absolutely.
I didn't know, I was reading in here, you know, some of the legal.
Yep, and some municipalities, like I said, Councillor Wells
I don't
said,
think we
has
need to
2
go
or
down
3.
that road because our vendors or contractors will have to obviously pay the 100, probably similar fee schedules.
I personally think being a small municipality, we don't need to have 3 or 4 different online modules. In the bigger cities like Toronto, Ottawa, probably would need 2 or 3, but
I'm thinking so too.
we'll look at doing one first, seeing what the benefits are from there, and bring it back to council, kind of, you know, to indicate what the benefits have been, and we'll move forward from there.
I think we need to learn to swim before we head across the English Channel. So, yeah.
There's just one more thing before we go on. If, by saying that, just using the one, we would definitely have to post it and put it out to the public that, say if Weldon Son or whoever wants to go, well, you get in contact with us and you pay your subscription, you're on the list like just to get it that we got to promote it, that we're just, it's not in-house that we know this, it goes out that.
No, we probably look at doing something on our website as far as tenders and direct them to the website for bids and tenders, and maybe put something in the papers just to get the word out. Absolutely. Yep. Something new that we're doing, so we need to get that message out to everybody.
Okay. I guess my caution is that we're expecting, you know, I'm taking Councillor Wells' knowledge of the systems in mind, is that, you know, you're expecting, if I have to bid, I got to pay. It's a bit of a challenge. I understand the thinking, but it sounds like I'm paying for work that somebody else should be doing, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
Like the small stuff we can't go down because the small contractors here are not going to pay it. They will not, guaranteed. They say, well, you want to play with big boys, you go ahead. You're going to find out it's going to cost you more money. So, you know, you as a big major contractor watch that kind of stuff. There's others that don't, and that's, but the counties use it. So,
But at the end of the day, Mayor, like you get in RFPs that you're doing $500,000 jobs up to $1 million or whatever. Like companies are already associated with companies like that for sure.
For sure, it's a small fraction of what
if you're not
right?
you're not doing your due diligence as far as a business owner if you're not on these boards.
Okay, sounds like council wants to go down that road, so go on with it then, please. Thanks, Sarah. So next one is draft speed limits bylaw, and Nathan, are you part of this and the bylaw specific, and then Jeff jump in for the schedule, or how are we doing this?
I think Jeff can speak to the schedule in terms of where council would like the speed limits and lead the discussion, and any questions on the bylaw aspect that I can address.
Okay, Jeff, welcome.
Welcome, Mayor and Council. How are you today?
We're all good.
So in front of you on the different maps, which I submitted, I kind of itemized the existing speed limits as per our last conversation that we had. So I identified the 50 zones, the 60 zones, and the 70 kilometer an hour zones. There is a little bit of discussion I need to have with council on their flavor for some roads that are not identified, just to put the bug in your ear. So as you'll see, presently, the 50 zone encompasses the village of Iroquois and the village of Morrisburg. Iroquois consists of Bouk Street and Station Street. And then it has the village of Iroquois down to south of Elizabeth Drive, and then the speed limit changes to 60 on Carmen Road. It goes out to Adair, over to Meadowbrook, and encompasses all the roads north of County Road 2. Then when you go out heading east on Highway 2, then Savor comes into play, Grisdale, and so on. My question for you, Mayor and Council, is Dr. Miller is not identified as having a speed limit, and it would default to 80. My question for you, I guess, would be, are you happy to keep it at 80? Or is that something that you would like to see as a different speed zone, as well as Golf Club Road? it's not identified because there's no houses on Golf Club Road until you get down to the sewer treatment plant. And then there's probably a dozen houses out to the point. Those are my two concerns for Iroquois, looking for some feedback before we move on, if we could.
Okay. Go ahead.
Golf Club Road, I would think should be at least a 55 or 50. You're saying it's an 80 now, Jeff? Golf Club Road?
There's no houses on it, so, and it doesn't fall, I don't believe it falls within the town limits. But you could make it a 60, you can make it a 50. I guess this is the time where we're creating a bylaw, so let's do it right the first time.
Yeah, I would lower Golf Club Road. What's your feeling on the pedestrian traffic on Dr. Miller? Anyone walk along there?
Seeing it's got a new surface, people do like to walk on that road. Does it warrant a 70? Maybe. Does it warrant a 60? Maybe. Is 80 too fast? Again, I don't know.
That's a tricky one, I think. I don't know if 80 is the right spot on that. I don't know if it be reduce it to a 70 just to create awareness that there's a reduction and there may be, I don't know.
Have we had any requests on that road at all?
As of today, Mr. Mayor, no, I have not received a request to have it decreased or increased.
Okay. Well, I just caution council, if you're going to take an 80 to a 70, it's kind of
Yeah, pointless.
pointless.
Okay. Well, if there's been no complaints on the 80, the Golf Club Road only because it's, I don't know, most people would assume it's, lower, but I'll see what the rest of council has to say.
Okay.
I think Golf Club Road should be a 50 myself. There's a lot of people that walk on that street. And same with Dr. Miller. Every time I go to Iroquois, I always end up on Dr. Miller, and there's always 4 or 5 people walking. I think 80 is excessive for that road to start with because it's a very short jog both ways to the corner. Myself, I'd like to see it most likely at a 60. But when we had this discussion, did we not talk about changing the speed in both the village of Iroquois and the village of Morrisburg to 40 kilometers through town?
It was a thought on the table right now, but right now we're defaulting to the 50.
Okay.
So if council wants to go that way, there's some work involved, but
No, that's fine. No, that's fine with me. But I thought we had a little discussion on that. But yeah, I'd like to see Golf Club Road at 50 and Dr. Miller at 50 or 60. And all the rest I'm happy with.
I don't know, Golf Club, yeah, I bring it down. Dr. Miller, I don't know. I'm sure we're gonna get requests to have it lowered if we don't, once this comes out. So, do we do it now? I mean, and that'll be it'll be just a matter of time before we're gonna get formal requests to lower it if we don't lower it now. I would maybe run it down to 70 because we're going to get the request. I know that's, it's just a given, and Golf Club down. I'd bring it down to 50, the same as the rest of the town. Yeah.
Yeah, as far as those speed limits go, every time actually I go to Iroquois, I just take Miller and just being nosy, go up and take Golf Club. There is people that walk it, but I don't, as far as 50, I think it's wide open there. And this is just preference from all of us here. I think if you went 60 for both roads, it's more and low enough, and people are good at, even at 70 kilometers an hour, you're, like on a road, that thing, you can get stopped. It's wide open, you can see things. So if you did 60 for both roads, I think it'd be because you're turning, you're going from 50, then you're turning going east, then it becomes 60. If you just take that whole circle there right back through to Iroquois and make it all 60. But that's my take on it.
Okay, so we're somewhat all over the road. Golf course road tends, if you look at the village map, it's part of the old village. So 50 makes logical sense there. Dr. Miller at 60 makes logical sense. So I know you're gonna sign it, it doesn't make any difference either way, right? Once you put it in a schedule, you gotta sign it. You just can't assume that people know, so. So
I'm good with
50 and
that.
60,
Sure.
Yep.
okay, there's your direction on that.
So Mayor, 50 for Golf Club Road and 60 for Dr. Miller?
Yep,
Okay, perfect. Now, my other question is Boathouse. It doesn't have a speed limit posted on it, but I believe that that should be a 50 because of traffic going in and out of the marina.
okay. Sounds like 50 works for now.
Perfect. So the second map is the map of the village of Morrisburg. Morrisburg has a 50 zone because of the village. 50s start at Coyle Drive, with Coyle Drive inclusive, and goes east to Allison Avenue. It also encompasses Prospect, Campbell Street, Rowena Drive, and Felker Way. It also encompasses the village, or the little hamlet, if you will call it that, of Mariahtown. So that's Morrisburg. If any concerns, questions, I can answer at this time.
You all good at 50 or you want to contemplate 40? I'm gonna, Prescott's doing their 40 right now. I find it a bit slow. I was surprised if you have to drive your down to 40. You're, especially on some sections of Prescott, you're going out and okay, I'm going 40 and there's nothing here, and that's a challenge. So, especially if you're going to encompass all of this. Yes.
I don't have an issue with the 50. Where I have the issue with the 50 is Main Street going down through the shopping center.
Okay, that we'll have a discussion on the plaza, because that we should have had that in Iroquois too, when we had mentioned that, and I was there this morning and I remember that. So, council had a discussion about the plazas, so you want to continue on because you have more experience in the plazas than the rest of us.
Well, me standing at Value Mart for 6 months volunteering, and that is classified as Main Street in Morrisburg. The speed limit is not posted, and I think 50 kilometers an hour is just absolutely right out of this world. I think it should be taken down to most likely 20 kilometers, and that's the same with the Iroquois. And at 50 kilometers an hour, people try to drive 50 kilometers an hour down through the shopping center, and if a pedestrian ever walked out in front, they wouldn't have a chance. So I think both Morrisburg and Iroquois, the malls should be dropped to at least 20 kilometers an hour, and that makes awareness for everybody, because people do not understand what those crosswalk signs mean on the ground. And that's how I stand on that one.
So that would include all the so-called roads in the Iroquois Plaza also,
Yep.
in front, back,
Yep.
and then Main Street up to how far? Right to, it goes to Pilot Way, right?
That's in Morrisburg, yeah.
Okay.
I would take it right straight down through the same speed limit, 20 kilometers an hour.
Okay. Discussion on 20.
Yeah, 20 or 15. I think it's going to be interesting, especially for Morrisburg when we do all the construction. People trying to avoid the construction and go through the mall. I think you're going to have some issues there. But I agree with Councillor Lewis. 20 or 15.
15's a little low, I will say
Well,
that right now.
the problem is if it's busy in there, you know what I mean? You're doing 15. If it's at nighttime, then it's going to do 50 anyway. But
The other day, I made 3 trips up and down the mall.
Doing
in
15?
Marshall. I did one at 10, one at 15, and one at 20.
15's good or 20's good?
10 and 15 are a bit slow.
Okay.
I think 20 is just about right.
Fair enough. 20 it is then. Yeah.
Well researched.
I'll bow to my colleague's judgment on this, and I'll agree with 20.
I have no issues.
Okay, so the plazas, all those little streets, in and out, 20, including Iroquois.
Perfect.
Thanks, Councilor Lewis. Anything else in Morrisburg at the 50 range for now? Okay,
I have nothing.
okay, then we'll move on to the next map.
So the next map I have in front of me is County Road 16, where it meets Henderson Road and Gilmer Road. Presently, they are posted as 50-kilometer-an-hour zones, and I could give you the exact measurements, so you have them. So if you're in Princeton and you go west on Gilmer Road, the 50 sign, which is presently posted, is at 385 meters west of County Road 16. So that takes you kind of out to, well, you're into the farmland, 385 meters west of County Road 16 in Princeton. And the one east of County Road 16 is 450 meters east of that intersection, and you're getting out into farmland also. Those are presently posted as 50s, as I presented on the map.
Okay.
50's good. I personally myself, I think they should be brought up to 60 anyways, because you're going from Princeton right up past Zambergen's area, you're only at 50. I can't see why that road can't be at 60 to, there's nothing there going east or west. I think 60 should be where they should be at.
So keep in mind, Councillor Wells, County Road 16 is a posted 50 going north-south through the village. That's the only, just to keep consistency with the 50. That's where my thought was.
I'm good at leaving it 50. I'm not 10 kilometers here or there. It's not good. At the end of the day, there are people that travels that road all the times. They have their speed limit, so it's not going to change too much. So.
I could see, I could appreciate, or I would agree with the 50 going west from the corner past the park and whatnot. 50 going east. But to be uniform and consistent, if it's 50 into Princeton now, right, Jeff, on the county road, it's 50 now, I would leave it up. I put them
It
both
is
at
correct.
50. I don't know if we need, like, going east, especially. I like the idea of 50 going up past the park and whatnot, and to the outskirts of Princeton, I guess, if you will.
So it will stay the same then Princeton, because it's presently posted as 50.
Okay, we have to ask.
No, I think it should stay at 50 myself.
I'm good with 50.
Okay, we're good. Next map.
Perfect. So the next map in front of you should be Riverside Heights, and that speed is posted as a 50 from County Road 8 right to the furthest east point where it reconnects to County Road 2. That is posted as a 50 zone.
We all good with 50 in Riverside Heights? Okay, we're good.
Okay. So the next map in front of you, which I have, is the 60-kilometer-an-hour zone, which is in the village of Iroquois, which commences 117 meters south of Elizabeth Drive and goes up to the Iroquois Point. That is a 60 zone in Iroquois. Posted with signage presently.
That was the old county. Yeah.
It's an old county road, yes, when it was County Road 1.
Any changes there from any counselors? Okay, we're good.
Okay. So then my next map in front of me here is Haynesville Road, which is a 60 zone. And it stretches from County Road 16 in Haynesville. It encompasses 295 meters west of County Road 1. And the reason for the 60 is because it matches up with County Road 18 to the east side of Carmen Road. So that's why there was a 60 there. That can be reduced. There's no signage there presently, so I do have to get a sign. So you can, at this point, either make it a 50 or 60. It's in your hands right now.
I think 60 is good for that.
Yeah, I have no issue with the 60.
Okay, we're good with that?
So it'll be a 60 kilometer, perfect.
Yes.
So the next map in front of you should be Lakeshore Drive, the 60 kilometer an hour zone. It starts 88 meters east of Flag and goes into heading eastward towards Mariatown, and it stops 50 meters west of Cherry. That is a 60 kilometer an hour posted from the old counties of Sdmc when they owned that road.
Okay, any issues there?
I'm good with that.
Okay, we're good with that section.
Okay, so then the last section, I believe, should be the 70 kilometer an hour zone, which is always a hot topic. It goes from 88 meters west, or 80 meters east of Flag, around to Highway 2. The only road that it does not encompass is Dr. Stevens Drive. That road is kind of left there. So if that, at your choice, your discretion, that could be a 70, a 60, whatever you choose to have on that road, or it can default as an 80 as a rural road. But that is our only 70 kilometer an hour zone within within South Dundas.
So we've had many requests on this section of Lakeshore from a speed point of view. As much as 60 sounds a little slow in places, my recommendation to council would be going down to 60 in this stretch. If people want to drive faster, Highway 2 is available and they can go 80 kilometers an hour. Lakeshore Drive is, there's a lot of people that walk it. And the traffic is high enough that I think 60 is good. Most people will drive faster than 60 anyway. 70, you're going to drive 80. It's just the natural tendency of the majority of the drivers. But my recommendation is to put her to 60 and see how it goes.
I'm good with 60.
Yep, I'm okay with that.
it should be at 60.
Okay, so you're going to reduce that to 60 once we enact the bylaw.
Okay.
was-
That is presently all I have, Mr. Mayor. There's only one other outstanding area, and that's up in Glen Stewart, which would be William Street and Cindy Crescent, which presently is unposted, is not posted. Again, that's a built-up area. It is out in the country, but it's still a built-up subdivision. Just looking for guidance on, do we maintain it as a default 80, or do we take it to a 70, 60, 50? I'm open to discussions.
I would put that to 60.
So you're being specific on the two roads within Glen Stewart, which is the alt subdivision, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so from your point of view, though, they are built-up areas, correct? Like, I look at our schedule, our bylaw, and perhaps what we need to specify in it, that all our villages, and they would be more, villages that are Morrisburg, Iroquois, Williamsburg, are 50 by default. And then the rural hamlets also could be included unless otherwise posted. Because part of Glen Stewart, you don't need to drive 50, but those two little side streets, you wouldn't even want to drive 80 on them.
No.
They should be a 50 just on automatic. But you also got Saver Road, you got that whole subdivision, it's not signed, like, there's enough
Yeah,
traffic there, we may
Saber-
end up having to look at those kind of, Doran. They're not within any, they're in part of our rural structure, not a hamlet, they're not anything else, but they're a built-up area within the municipality. And there might be others too.
Saver Road is posted, Mr. Mayor.
But
It's
it-
posted as a 50.
But unless you write it down in the list, it doesn't count, right? So,
No, that's correct.
and you didn't have it on the list. Coyle's posted it at 52, but it was not on it. It technically isn't within the villages of Morrisburg because of the expanded boundaries we put in a number of years ago.
I think it's on it now, though. The 50 was on the map for Quail.
Yeah, it is because it's part of the village, but if it wasn't part of the village, then you would literally have to add it on.
Yep.
See, and that's what, so that Schedule A has to be very specific in what you want and what you don't want. So if Saver needs to be added, you need to add that on. If there's specific streets and specific villages, you'd have to add it on and then sign it.
Correct.
And then maybe within the speed bylaw and maybe, not sure, I'll defer to the deputy clerk. Should we mention about the HTA defaults in the rural areas?
Yeah, so in some additional research I did last week, we can speak to it within the bylaws, and that any areas that aren't posted will default to that 50-80 divide, depending on if it's built up in that area or not.
Okay.
Yeah, we can add language into the bylaw that specifies that, so it's very clear.
I think we have to be as clear as possible. This is new, but the more clear you put it in the first time, the better long-term. And the other thing that I did think of is that perhaps what we need to work on is a speed change request policy, because we are always asked about changing speeds, and that's okay to a point, but it'd be nice to have something to justify some of those speed limits, whether it's built up areas or you don't want to do a study. In the end, council can make a decision, but I caution council in making some decisions that make no logical sense. And you try to slow down traffic. And okay, here's a prime example. Anybody who drives County Road 2, and I'm in Leeds Grenville, and I'm in Augusta Township. If you're coming from Brockville or you're going toward Maitland on the west side, they have a 50 zone there. They dropped it down. Something has to happen. There was an accident or something, but it used to be 70 for sure. And now it's down to 50. It's a real hard thing to justify crawling. I know there's lots of residential.
There was a bad accident right there.
Fair enough, but that's sometimes you can justify it with an accident, but sometimes accidents happen for other reasons other than a speed limit that's not being observed.
Well,
Right.
and if it doesn't make sense, they're just going to create another accident. That's the risk, right? So if you've got people following the 50 and people saying this is too slow, then you create more opportunity
Yeah.
for more accidents. That's the problem with reactionary.
It's always nice to have some consistency. I know we don't need a policy, but we all get requests on speed limits, and some guidance is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
In the end, we can always overrule a policy and make that decision, but at least if staff, like at counties, they have ways and methods of looking at things, and part of it is actually driving through Glen Stewart and county. There was a meeting of the minds there in August, I believe, and nothing has come back to county council, but there will, concerning the speed going through Glen Stewart on County Road 1. But the Director of Transportation and Planning will look at it, analyze it within his knowledge and the scope of any kind of policy that they have to justify it. If in the end, and then he says to county council, this is my recommendation, these are the reasons why I recommend it, and then county council make a decision one way or the other on it. It's a little bit of work, but if you're gonna have speed bylaw, you gotta deal with the request and be logical about it. I've had requests through whatever you want to call the hamlet east of Glen Becker, because you can go 80 through there. And, no, it's a county road, but there's other places that may end up being a part of our bailiwick. So, just a thought.
We'll bring back a policy that maybe has a complaint form that would need to be completed and justifications for it we'll bring it back for council as a draft and we'll look for some input.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other roads that we need to deal with today? This is a start, and then we can, once you start this kind of things, it can evolve, but at least it's better than what we have now, which is absolutely nothing, or suggested speed limits, which is what they really are. They have no practical enforcement to them. So, anything else from council? Anything else from you, Jeff?
I have nothing. What I brought forward was what is existing. I think we've had a good discussion on it, and I'll visit with Ethan, and we'll get something more firmed up when it comes to roads and whatnot. So, no, that's good. Thank you kindly for that discussion.
Yeah, anything from you, Ethan, on this?
No, we can make the adjustments that council discussed. We can bring back a bylaw summarizing those changes.
Okay, with that, thank you. Item E, snowplow and sander. I guess that's Jeff's.
So, Mayor and Council, this is a topic which we had on our unfinished business summary about applying a plow and a sander onto a 1-ton truck or a 3/4-ton truck within the municipality. I just want to kind of get your flavor for it. I know I kind of presented a pricing through my unfinished business summary, but also when I presented the hourly rates for snow removal, there was a little bit of a discussion brought up when I presented that report from the dollar values that we received. So I just want to kind of finish off this topic, if we can, either a yay or a nay, and move forward from it. So as far as what I see, there's definitely pros and cons with owning our own 3/4-ton truck with a plow and a sander. The pros are we have more flexibility, that we can use the truck to go out and do our country bridges that we presently plow with a tractor, or we can scoot in between the parked cars in the plazas at Morrisburg and Iroquois and grab the salting aspect of it. We would need additional staff to run the truck. We could also use it for doing the arena instead of using our big plow truck. The downfall is it's hard on equipment. I was speaking with our mechanic this morning, and he says be prepared to do repairs to the front end of your vehicle, ball joints, U-joints, and I believe Councillor Wells addressed that when we had this discussion. But I think the biggest concern that I have, Mayor and Council, is the costs or the unit pricing which we receive from our local contractors. I just have a hard time justifying owning our own piece of machinery from the pricing that we receive from our local contractors to do snow removal. And we only need our contractors when we need them. They're not a guaranteed rate. They're not a guaranteed X number of hours for plowing snow. So as the snow falls, we pick up the phone and we call the contractors. We know that the work is being done. Where if we owned our own by putting it on our own truck, yes, we have the flexibility of owning it, but we also have the repairs that could come along with it by having a plow and a sander. That's what I wanted to present to you, Council. I'm more than welcome to hear your side.
Yeah, and I'm sticking to what I said before. Like it's a lot cheaper to just use our reoccurring services. They're just used as we need them. To go out and purchase this, and especially at this time, the money's not that plentiful around the table. So I would just stick with because we are getting excellent rates for this type of plowing and stuff. So I would just leave it the way it is. Thank you.
I haven't heard anything that would persuade me to think we should own our own plow, and I sure don't think we should put it on a 3/4 ton anyways, but should be at least a 1 ton, and I haven't seen heard anything that would make me think that we need to have our own. Similar to Councillor Wells, we continue to use our recurring services until the price gets to the point that it's more justifiable.
I don't believe that we need our own plow on a 3/4 ton. The only place that I have an issue is during a heavy snowfall is our shopping plazas. I know last year 2 or 3 times through the day, whenever I was going down through or I was going to a store or whatever, I've had to help push vehicles out of the snow because the snow accumulates so heavy and there's not a lot of room in there. So are these contractors available through the day? Or if we get 8 inches of snow in an afternoon, we just live with what we got?
To answer your question through you, Mr. Mayor, yeah, they're available anytime we need them. It's strictly per hour, a cost per hour to go into the plazas to clean. Once that parking lot gets full, it is very tricky to navigate through parked cars. So we normally just let the snow fall and then we get in there at midnight, clean it all up, and we carry on the next morning. Is kind of how we have been doing things. But if you want to change the way that it's being done, by all means, it's just strictly a phone call, and we bring the plow in, the contractor, and he can plow where he can plow.
I don't think I really want to change the way it's being done. It's just that I think that we should have a look at it. That's, and I understand that it's hard to navigate through there through the daytime. But it's something to keep an eye on.
It sounds like the contractors are the way to go. It's like any other tool in your toolbox, as long as it's used properly and thought out strategically. I think strategy is probably your friend here. Then the contractors will be used properly. So I don't have any issue with that. I would caution though, I know since we've had the mechanic, it does seem that we're on both sides of the end where we're either saving a lot of money or it's going to cost a lot of money, and it just I would caution using that as the excuse. I'd like to see the return on investment instead and some numbers as opposed to just the mechanic says. So that's my thought.
Okay. I believe at budget, I was one of the ones that brought it up, and the council has made a lot of good points. We do spend a lot of money on contract services, and we gotta find the right balance, especially in the plaza. I sympathize with those in the plaza, like the other day where it was challenging, but I would not send out a crew to try to clean this, that, and everything else, because I think that's going to be worse. Like basically, you got the road, and if you're off it, then you have to make a decision, and if you got the vehicle that can make it or not. And we can't be perfect all the time.
No, that's true.
So we'll monitor the situation. I do know municipalities that use their ton truck with a plow and a salter in the back all winter, and if it's used all the time, then that's fair enough. But if it sits in Matilda's shop, I'm certainly one that's going to shove a plow on the front of her and a sander on the back, and away I go and deal with some of that stuff on our own, because others do it and I can't see them be all wrong. So with that, we'll continue on. Okay, since we've gone through it and it's 12:30, timing is perfect. So with that, I'd like to thank council for their efforts this morning. It was actually, we had a real good discussion on procurement, and I think we're going forward in a better way, and we started our speed limits bylaw, and we'll see how that goes. So I thank council for that, and thank all staff for their input, and thank the audience for participating. Deputy Clerk?
Moved by Councillor Lewis, second by Deputy Mayor Gardner, that council now adjourned to meet again at the call of the chair.
All heard the motion. Those in favor? Opposed?